Whole band.
Welcome, everybody, into the Brickyard podcast. This is our live stream, officially back and up and running. Excited for the NFL season. I don't know about you, but we're starting to get those little stories and we're starting to get those headlines. Preseason is back up and running, and you're like, oh, yeah, we are about to be back up and running and on fire because football will be here a lot faster than most of you realize it.
Yeah, no, it's insane. We're starting the preseason tonight. We got the Hard Knocks starting with the Chicago Bears. We have trade rumors about Brandon Aiyuk. People getting in fight at practice, Hall of Fame games. We got a whole bunch of stuff to go over today, but we have officially ended the abysmal offseason where there's nothing to talk about. Now there's everything to talk about as we enter into the next season of NFL football.
Yeah, it's like during the off season, it's like, okay, there's the NBA finals until like June. That's cool because no one really watches basketball until the NFL season is over anyways, and until the playoffs there, unless you're really diehard. And if so, respect to all of you league passes that are out there. Definitely a grind that you're putting in with all 82 games. And then we have baseball. And
not
that's
for the weak.
it. And then we also have the Olympics like once every 4 years, but I don't know. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I just feel like the Olympics is a conglomeration of sports that people normally don't watch. And the sports I would normally watch, like basketball, aren't competitive. Or they shouldn't be competitive.
No, they shouldn't be competitive. And I also feel like, I mean, we care because of the Olympics and because it's, country pride and whatnot. But for the most part, the games are not fun to watch. I mean, you're watching us beat up on plumbers. Like the same reason why people discredit the 60s and 70s. It's the same exact thing when it comes to the Olympics. We're beating up on people who would normally work a 9-to-5 job and don't make any money in the NBA at all. Like people who just don't do anything outside of Olympic basketball. Like it's really not that enjoyable, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like women's beach volleyball, pretty great sport to watch if you have nothing else on there. I don't know about you, but I've always been a closeted volleyball fan. I don't know about any of the other viewers in the chat if you're out there watching beach volleyball for the same reason, because you respect and love the sport and all the hard work that these people put into the game.
I knew you were closeted, but I didn't think it was for volleyball, I'll be honest.
Yeah, honestly, volleyball's a fun sport. And then like the Olympics also like screws people over. Like you don't get paid jack for it, but they generate tons of money. It's almost a worse theft than the NCAA, because at least with the NCAA, like they're paying people large amounts of money under the table. The Olympics, it's like, no, even though we're getting $1 billion of revenue, if you get a gold medal, maybe you get $37,000. It depends on the country, but you have to basically get a medal to get paid. Then they put you in these terrible hotel rooms. And then did you see the thing about the like triathlon swimmers getting sick?
I saw about the diet, but I didn't hear about the triathlon people.
Yeah, so they're making the triathlon people swim in a river that they had to delay the competition for it because the river was too polluted for it and it wasn't safe to swim in. And then it made all of the athletes sick and they were throwing up, and then a lot of the athletes withdrew from it. But you're making people swim in basically a disgusting brown, just nasty river. And there's like the thing where the French people were going to protest the Olympics, and it was the river that everyone was going to shit in before the Olympics. And then they're like, hey, why don't you all go swim there?
One thing that you just said there that I don't think I could just breeze past. What about the water that they were going to shit in? I haven't heard about this.
Yeah, so basically the people of France are like, hey, if you're going to clean up the city for the Olympics, but not for the people who live here, well, we're going to go ahead, and after you clean up the river, we're all going to take a massive dump in it and protest, because we also want our city to be clean. Leave it to the French. They know how to say what you will about the French, they know how to protest and do revolutions.
You know, I think it's just you can take Europe as a whole. When it comes to protesting, I feel like America has really lost its edge there. Like, so they clean up the water for the Olympics, which, like, obviously that makes sense for the Olympics. But the fact that they were going to protest taking a shit in the pond is honestly unhinged. But am I surprised by any of it? Not really. That's amazing.
Yeah, America's idea of protesting is like, oh, we looted a Target. Like, cool,
You know,
I guess. You get a PlayStation,
yeah,
some Nikes.
Or burning down a local pizza store. Like, oh wow, there we go. Let's hurt one person in the process. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, someone who's hurt, though, is apparently Brandon Aiyuk in San Francisco. Christian McCaffrey was in an interview today. He's had an injury in training camp. So they're kind of putting him on the sideline. They're like, hey, go talk to the media, get some rest in, go play ping pong and cornhole with the kickers because they don't do anything during training camp. And they're like, hey, Christian, Brandon Aiyuk. And then he referred to him in the past tense. So Christian McCaffrey's already under the impression that, hey, this guy is gone. He's out of here. No longer part of the San Francisco 49ers organization. And there are 3 teams in the running. Number 1, the New England Patriots, trying to rebuild right now. Probably the most wide receiver needy team in the NFL at that point. And yes, I will put the Patriots over the Carolina Panthers. I will.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, maybe the Buffalo Bills, actually. And then after that, you have Cleveland. Do you want to go play with the Diddy of the NFL? No, Deshaun Watson. And then you have Jameis, who might be eating W's. But you have Kevin Stefanski, great coach. And then there's Pittsburgh, legendary team. You and George Pickens may be arguably up there with best wide receiver duos in the league, if not your number 4 behind, like the Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddles of the world or A.J. Brown. But overall thoughts that the Niners are officially looking to trade Aiyuk, and are you surprised, or did you kind of expect this?
As soon as he was on Ryan Clark's podcast and he was talking about the contract negotiations and basically just airing out his dirty laundry, I'm like, I don't think he stays. Plus, also, when you looked at it, they're paying Trent Williams, the highest paid tackle in the league. Christian McCaffrey's the highest paid running back in the league. Deebo Samuel at one point was the highest paid wide receiver in the league. They're paying Nick Bosa, who's also one of the highest defensive players in the league. So at one point, it's like, how far can you stretch your money thin before you literally can't pay them? And I thought, like, honestly, Deebo is a great player, but I honestly think they probably should trade Deebo instead of Brandon Aiyuk. But Brandon Aiyuk is the one who's up for contract, so trade him, I guess. But I'm not surprised by this at all. In fact, I feel like them stalling is questionable in and of itself. But ultimately, between the 3 teams, right, it depends on what he wants, right? If he wants to have 170 targets, he should go to the Patriots because every other player on that team, we don't know how good they are. 2 rookie wide receivers. You have Juju, who we don't even know if he's going to play anymore. And then Kendrick Bourne, who's most likely going to be packaged in that trade. Outside of that, it's a couple of tight ends. Patriots, if you want to be the number 1, go to the Patriots. For the Browns, if you want to be in the most competitive team with the most unclear expectations, go to the Browns. If they don't have to give up Amari and Deshaun Watson returns to good form, then that Browns team is going to be, I mean, they could potentially make it to the Super Bowl with how good that team is. And Kevin Stefanski, especially like offensive-minded, the closest parallel to Kyle Shanahan would be Kevin Stefanski. I think like fit-wise, he probably fits better in Cleveland. And then if you just want to go with legacy and then also be in a better situation than the New England, the Steelers, like you have the legacies of Mike Wallace and Antonio Brown and Hines Ward. And I think like being a Steelers wide receiver is kind of similar to the case of like being like an LSU wide receiver or like there's a certain level of legacy with it, like playing for the Lakers back in the day. Like there's a certain level of legacy. Running backs for the Cowboys, like certain brands that just fit well with great wide receivers. I think the Steelers if you're going for legacy, I think maybe that's where you'd go.
Do you actually think, though, if he went to the Steelers or if he went to the Patriots, do you think I think the Patriots would be better than the Steelers, specifically because if I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I'm looking at it around the NFL. You have people like CJ Stroud saying Drake May is the most NFL ready um, quarterback coming into the draft this year. Whether you think that's maybe they're friendly, that's just what some people around the NFL are saying. But he's also been compared to Josh Allen. And if you look basically at what Josh Allen did with Stephon Diggs, you can say, okay, I could be the catalyst for this New England Patriots team taking off. Because if you look at the Patriots defense compared to what their offense has needed to do, their defense has actually been one of the best in the league over the past few years. They've had a championship defense, even with their offense being abysmal, and their defense has stayed on top of it. Even when their offense struggles, which is typically when you see defenses starting to fade away. So I think if I'm Ayuk, you go to New England, they're willing to max you out. This is what they are saving money for. And then also, New England probably wants him the most because if you're Pittsburgh, you have George Pickens already on that team, and maybe you want to do a 1-2 combo, but do you need Brandon Aiyuk to succeed? Not really. If you're Cleveland, do you really need Brandon Aiyuk to succeed? He would be nice, but you still have DJ Moore on that team. You still have Amari Cooper there. You still have a great run game under Stefanski. And if Deshaun Watson turns into the playmaker he once was, then you don't necessarily need him to succeed. And one way you put the Browns is they're a team that no one will ever really know how to properly rate their expectations because no one knows the mystery of the Cleveland Browns. Like, okay, it all depends on Deshaun Watson, but does anyone actually think Deshaun Watson's going to return to himself? No. But does he still have the potential? Yes. So I think overall, the best situation for him would be New England because then they can say, finally, after passing on, you know, overpaying for wide receivers who maybe they didn't think were a true number one. I think Ayuk is the best receiver available, and then New England will be desperate to show why they're the best team available with their defense, with their consistency, and their legacy as well. Because I think as of recently, what team has a better legacy? Is it Pittsburgh or New England? I would argue New England because Mike Tomlin has gotten his lunch eaten by the Patriots every single year, no matter if it's Mac Jones or Tom Brady or Cam Newton.
Yeah, I agree. I also think like being a great Patriots wide receiver is there's a certain level of legacy there, right? Like for example, like Wes Welker, Julian Edelman. These are guys that I feel like if they didn't go to the Patriots, would they have been Hall of Famers? I think with what Wes Welker did for the Patriots for the time he was there, is what's going to put him in the Hall of Fame. He was fed targets. And now obviously we're talking about the Brady era, but Randy Moss, his legacy, I think him joining the Patriots increased his legacy, although he would have been a Hall of Famer regardless. There's something about like going to a team like the Patriots who you look at the last 15 years and they've had really it's been Julian Edelman and Gronk. And if you remove those two guys, we're talking about Philip Dorsett and we're talking about Chris Hogan and we're talking about no disrespect to him, but Danny Amendola. Like we're talking about guys who are fine players, but no one to the level of Brandon Aiyuk. I think the last great receiver we had like him was Randy Moss. And obviously, I think Randy Moss is an all-time better player, but it's going to mean more for the city of Boston for him to go there. And I think the Patriots fans are going to be beside themselves if they get him. They're going to be head over heels in love with the guy, especially if we start paying him and he starts performing well. It's going to mean more for Boston. And Boston fans might be crazy, but at the same time, if you perform well for them, they're going to build statues for you. They're going to retire your jerseys and they're going to love you until the day you die. You're going to have sponsorships with Dunkin' Donuts until the day you die.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You have the free Dunkins as well. And then also what you're looking at. So if you want to win and get paid the most money, and New England said they're willing to max him out, look at Buffalo. I don't know, falling apart a little bit. Didn't really know what they were doing this past offseason. Lost Stephon Diggs, lost Gabe Davis, lost their entire defense except for a fossilized senior citizen in Von Miller, who they're paying way too much money to. Miami. I mean, does anyone really think Miami's going to do anything in the playoffs? Absolutely not. And I would take New England over them if Drake May is what he's supposed to be. And then you look at the Jets, like, well, Rodgers, kind of a massive playoff disappointment, massive choker in the playoffs, and has been over the past few years. If there's a player who has a great regular season and disappointment in the playoffs, it would be Aaron Rodgers over the past 5 years. So you look at that versus Cincinnati, could be good for 4 or 5 more years. Baltimore
Decade
could
even.
be good for 4 or 5 more years. Pittsburgh, always pretty good. Cleveland, and then if you go to one of the AFC North teams, I think if you look at New England, they're actually in a sneaky good position to reclaim the division with some of their rivals kind of returning to their dysfunctional selves that they have been.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bills will be fine over the long term, right? If Josh Allen continues to be an elite quarterback, they'll be in the mix. But the Dolphins, once when Tua's contract sets in, you're going to lose the likes of Tyreek Hill, whose contract's up after next year. Jalen Waddle's contract's going to kick in, so they're going to have to get rid of players like Bradley Chubb. And the list goes on for the Dolphins. Dolphins, they're a year or two away from complete collapse. And then the Jets are maybe within the season could collapse if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt again. You saw how dysfunctional they were last year. And then, God forbid, even if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, he's in his 40s now. And, you know, he flirted with jeopardy. He flirted with retirement. He's certainly flirted with ayahuasca as well. Like, the Jets are back on the verge of being the worst team in that division very quickly. If Drake May is a serviceable quarterback in the league and they get him weapons, which is something they didn't do for Mac Jones, like, I think the Patriots, even if they're not winning the division, I think they're still in the playoff mix with how good their defense is. Plus, if you have decent enough talent on offense, then I don't know. I think you set yourself up pretty well there.
Yeah, all you need is a guy who can make a play because the Patriots' run game has been good. Their tight end play has been good. And then really they've been a star away. And then if you can trade for another guy who's nice, he doesn't need to be like the guy, but he can be like kind of like what a Eric Decker or a Marvin Jones was when they're kind of at the peak of their career. Just bring in a journeyman who can be a reliable number 2 and can make a big catch. And then your run game and Brandon Aiyuk will be able to open it up. But the problem is teams catch on when you have a good run game, but you can't push it down the field. So when you actually have someone who can open up the field for that run game, who the defense is like, okay, we don't need to worry about this team going 3 and out every time because now we have someone athletic with a cannon of an arm like Drake May. Now we're talking.
Yeah, no, exactly. Plus, also, with the Patriots, the last 5 years, it's been their offense has been so abysmal and so terrible that even similar to like we talk about the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett, and even if they had the 24th ranked offense in that league, they would have gone 13-4. If the Patriots offense in at least 4 of the games I can think of, the Giants game and a couple of the Jets games as well, if they could have just scored 10 points, they could have been the difference between 4 and 13. And I know it doesn't sound that much crazy, but 7 and 10, like 7 and 10, you're having a different discussion than 4 and 13. 4 and 13, it's terrible. Also with the Patriots, Matt Judon's the only person they're paying. And Matt Judon's contract is up after this year, and he's 33. So are they going to keep Matt Judon? Probably not. So then at that point, your highest paid player is going to be like Jabril Peppers. Like,
yeah,
what are we doing? Like, you
Fuck
got to
it.
pay
Even
somebody.
throw him into the 49ers because, like, if the Niners want someone on a 1-year deal, we need to make another Super Bowl push. We need to bring in another star who's motivated because all of our stars are tired right now. Someone we can pair with Nick Bosa on the other side. Like, okay, we'll take on your contract for a year and then you can walk, you know?
I mean, they did the same thing with Chase Young, and you think Matt Judon's better than Chase Young? I'd say so.
Way better. He's like,
Way
a
better.
difference maker. Not just
He's
hey, he's in the rotation and he was a high pick one time and had one good year. Yay, we have him.
Yeah, he's not Jadeveon Clowney coded.
He kind of is right now. Chase
What
Young,
has he done since his rookie season? He hasn't done anything. I mean,
I know.
I'll look at his sacks from last year, but like now he's on the Saints. He's following the trajectory of Jadeveon Clowney, who's played for how many teams now? Like at this point, he's going to be known for what he can do on the grids every day than what he's done on the football field.
The crazy thing was they almost beat the Bucs.
Yeah. No, they did almost beat the Bucs. That's crazy. Okay, here's a stat line. Okay, so his rookie season when he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, he had 7.5 sacks, and then a total of 44 tackles. Right. 2021, he had 1.5 sacks. Granted, he played 9 games, but didn't do anything. And then 2022, he has 0 sacks because he plays 2 games and gets hurt. And then this year, which is his quote-unquote return to form, he has 7.5 sacks and half as many tackles. He's a bust. Chase Young is absolutely a bust, and now he's on his 3rd team. And he's going to collect Infinity Stones just like Jadeveon Clowney, who played for the Titans and the Texans and the Browns and the Ravens, and the list goes on.
Yeah, like it's like a whole era now where it's like, oh yeah, that's just a grid player,
Yeah, that's the era we live in now. But yeah, I think Brandon Aiyuk, his best opportunity is with the Patriots, I think. But if he's looking to win, his best opportunity is probably Cleveland.
Cleveland? Yeah, it's still a risk. I don't know. I feel like there's still some bad juju left with the Browns.
Well, they're cursed. Just like the Bills and somewhat the Lions. And now the Jaguars too, but there's like something in the air. There's always going to be something in the air with the Browns until they do something. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Like it's kind of like the Giants are trying to do something, I guess. Brian Daboll's like, show me some life. Show me that you care. Show me something you're passionate about in practice. And they're like, okay, we're pretty passionate about shitting on Daniel Jones because he sucks. I don't know why you guys made him our starting quarterback, but what an absolute whiff of a signing. And yeah, we'll still bring it up as many times as possible because the Giants deserve it because you didn't sign Saquon. They're like, no, let's sign the guy who's basically if Walt Jr. and Jim Carrey had a baby. Now he's our quarterback on the field, and now he's jumping into fights in practice, which is basically an indication that players are not holding their tongue with Daniel Jones anymore. Hashtag not my quarterback going on in Giants camp right now with Daniel Jones. And believe who was it after practice who said Brian Burns, he's like, yeah, I don't want my quarterback getting into a scuffle in practice. Leave that to the offensive line.
No, he's not. I mean, he's not wrong. And the thing is that defense is so tired of Daniel Jones shit because I know Daniel Jones got hurt last year, but when he did play, he was 1-5. He had 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns in his entire time with the Giants last year. He played 6 games. He scored 2 touchdowns. Do the math. Then he had 6 interceptions. His QBR was in the 70s. Like, dog shit. That's the word that you would call that. Dog shit. Daniel Dog Shit should be his new name. Yeah. And outside of the 1 year where he was serviceable, he's been terrible. So, like, the defense, he doesn't sit with the defense when he sits on the bench. He sits at the end of the bench. Maybe he hangs out with his offensive line. But the defense is not his friend. If this was grade school, they would be giving him swirlies in the bathroom. Or they would be shoving him in a locker. But because he's on their team and because he's their quote-unquote franchise quarterback, they're just going to punch him in practice. Like, that's it. That's going to be them roughing him up. But other than that, Daniel Jones is not their guy. In fact, Tommy DeVito was their guy last year. Tyrod Taylor was their guy last year. And they were all better. Yeah, both of them.
Tyrod is better. Like, he played well with the Bills, and the Chargers tried to kill him.
True.
But he would have been starting that year over Justin Herbert. But like, Tyrod Taylor is a guy who has had success in the NFL. Daniel Jones, like, being mediocre, people are like, see, this is why we need to pay him. We can't let him go anymore because the defense was so good that year that they allowed the Giants to have a middle of the pack to bad offense and then win. And then Saquon was carrying them. So I can't imagine how bad in camp the Giants offense looks without Saquon, because you know what else Saquon does to the defense? He
What does he
gives
do?
them a cause to pause, to not hit Daniel Jones right away. They're like, oh, what if the ball's going to Saquon? Who's that guy now for the Giants now that Saquon and Darren Waller have retired? And then we also learned that if you have Tyrod Taylor and Danny DeVito, yeah, sure, Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson are threats down the field, but not when Daniel Jones is on the field. And then I think when Brian Burns also is talking about Daniel Jones letting his offensive line protect him, he needs to remember that the Giants' idea of protecting their quarterback is the pullout method. It's not actual protection.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, Saquon, they replaced Saquon with Devin Singletary, and they replaced Darren Waller with Danny Bellinger.
Yeah.
Two guys who are substantially worse. So their offense, which was already bottom of the league last year, is only going to get worse because Daniel Jones is getting paid $47 million this upcoming year. I pulled up his contract, and maybe they get out of the contract, maybe they don't. But Daniel Jones should be tried for treason for what he has done to the New York Giants. It is insane. And so, yeah, I mean, now people in practice are throwing punches at him, and honestly, the bullying arc is completed here. He already looks like if Jim Carrey was in grade school. But now you have people in that Giants organization taking their frustrations out on him.
And they should, because he's been the problem. But also the ownership has been the problem too, and the GM. Because we saw in Hard Knocks, they're like, Saquon's not leaving, right? And the GM's like, oh yeah, we're just going to let him go out to the market and we'll match whatever else he goes out there and get. The ownership's like, okay, great. And then they come back and they're like, hey, he signed with Philly. What the fuck? And it's like, well, we said we'd match him, but apparently he just wants to leave. I don't know what we're going to do about it. Like, that's also the problem, because I don't have a problem with the player going out there and getting the maximum amount of money. Even if it's Daniel Jones, you have the right to do so. It's the fact that the Giants ownership is that dumb to give him that amount of money when he wasn't good till year 5.
He wasn't even good. Like, look at the numbers. 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. QBR of 92. That's not good. 9-6-1. Completed 67% of his screen passes. Like, 15 touchdowns is not the bar. And okay, I'm ready for the comments to go, oh, but what about the rushing numbers? Okay. Well, he had 7 rushing touchdowns. He had rushed for 700 yards. Okay. So if you combine that, he has 22 touchdowns, and he had roughly about 4,000 total yards. And let's look at how many fumbles he had, because he's the king of fumbling. 12. He had 6 fumbles. So realistically, he was 22-15 with his total touchdown into turnover ratio, which is not good. That's just middle of the pack at best.
No, that's worse than middle of the pack. It's not even a 1-to-1. Actually, it's -1. It's like -1 to 1, right? It's like 0.5 is the difference.
Yeah, it's not good. But for some reason, they saw that instilled their faith. Like, oh, let's pay him $160 million. I would have given him $160 million to leave the building. I would have said, Daniel, go to the UFL, go to Canadian Football League. Hell, get ready for flag football in China in 2028 if you want to. But get out of our organization is what I would have said to him.
Yeah. But no. Now he's buying the good Adderall. He has the money for it. But yeah, I kind of like it though. We're seeing some fight being shown by the Giants, even if it's amongst themselves in practice.
Now I'm curious. Now, like, give me like one good reason why the Giants, like, why I should take them seriously this year. Like, what's one reason why I should have any bill of faith in the Giants with how bad they are?
Well, I have an article actually, and it has one reason why we need to believe in every single team in the NFL. And I know what you're thinking. How do you do the Panthers? But they found a way to do the Carolina Panthers. They found us a way to give us a reason to believe in every single NFL team. I'll go over the reasons and then you can react to it. Tell the
Okay.
people how they really feel. And then also in the chat, if you're watching us right now, we appreciate it. Let us know if you think this is a legit reason for one of these teams to contend. And at number 1, the Buffalo Bills. And it says stability on defense is a reason not to overlook the Bills.
Stability on from who? Who's on their defense now? Everyone is gone. What stability? They replaced the entire team. You know the analogy of like the wooden boat, and they replaced every piece of the boat. Is that boat still the same boat? No.
Yeah.
It's not in this case. They have nobody the same. They have Von Miller, Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer still. I can't keep track because half of the
I
team
think
is
he's on
gone.
the Dolphins
Ed Oliver
now. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wait,
I
Jordan
think he's
Poyer
on-
left. I'm pretty sure, right? He went to the
Yeah, I
Dolphins.
think he's on the Dolphins now.
Yeah. So Jordan Poyer's gone, and
Yeah.
the rest of
It
the
says
team's
as-
gone. So
Yeah, it says as long as Buffalo can settle the secondary, like, that's a pretty big ask. Also, who's your other pass rusher?
are they going to
Guess
be
you still have
starting
Matt
DeMar
Milano.
Hamlin now? Like who?
Probably, yeah.
What stability? They don't have any stability. Von Miller is 83 years old. Ed Oliver, he's a fine player, but everybody else is gone. They have to replace all. That's ridiculous. That's a reason to instill hope in them. Why you could have said Josh Allen, and that would have been a fine answer. But no, you say the defense, the thing that's the biggest question mark.
Yeah.
Fools.
Yeah, the defense is a big question mark because, like, the offense, Josh Allen, we'll see if they can figure it out. Receivers, probably your biggest question, but yeah. Then after that, they have the Miami Dolphins because powerful offense. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon A. Chain. All right. I won't poke
And
too many
then
holes
they
in that.
have the New England Patriots as defensive potential so they say the Patriots have potential on defense when they pretty much have the same unit as last year, which was probably better than the Bills' defense, but the Bills are stability and the Patriots are potential. What?
I don't know. I think if anything, the role should be switched, right? I mean, the Patriots bring back Christian Gonzalez and Matt Judon, and they have Jabril Peppers who's returning. That's already more players who are returning than the Bills can say are returning for their team. And then you add on all their hits. And they also re-signed Josh Uche, who was up for contract. They've pretty much brought everybody back on defense. More people are returning on the Patriots defense than the entire Bills roster, you can say at this point.
Yeah, and
That's
the funniest
ridiculous.
part was about this is finishing off with the Jets in that division. They say defense was already great.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. The question is, will Aaron Rodgers' Achilles stay intact this year? That's what they need to worry about.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers old, question mark? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
one reason to believe, you could have said Garrett Wilson too. I would have taken that.
yeah, that's the East. And then they move into the North, and the Ravens have elite balance.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
I can get behind that. Derrick Henry, you have Zay
Defense.
Jones now. So
Good
hopefully
defensive
your
players.
offense is good again. And then the Bengals, it says Joe Burrow is healthy. Knock on wood.
I think they could have said the same thing for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers is healthy, but yeah, he's healthy again, so the Bengals should be competing. Sure.
And then the Browns, again, defensive strength. It's like when they don't know what to write for hope, it's like, they're pretty good on defense, so that's a reason to have hope.
You couldn't have said Kevin Stefanski, who's won 2 Coach of the Years now at this point,
Yeah,
or been in the
because
conversation.
the funny thing is, you say Kevin Stefanski, the Pittsburgh Steelers, last team in that division, they say Mike freaking Tomlin.
Okay, so what? They're destined to be 8-1. Is that what that means?
Yeah,
They're so late.
8-1.
Who's the writer for this? I'm curious.
What's the writer for this? Let me see. Someone, David Kenyon.
David Kenyon. Okay.
David,
well, it's good to know.
What are you doing?
It's good to know that if you have nothing else to put, you can just put defensive strength.
Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Then after that, they moved to the South in the AFC. And starting with the Texans, they say the offense is better.
Yeah. I mean, the offense is better. You're right. Joe Mixon makes him better. Stephon Diggs makes him better. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Then after that, the Colts, Anthony Richardson, he's back.
He's back. He's played 3 games. That's the instill of hope.
Yeah, not their elite head coach play calling, but the guy who played 4 games and saw a flash of potential, even though he tried to get himself hurt every single play. That's the reason why you should have hope in them, not their elite offense. And Joe Flacco's your backup. Let's not forget.
Have faith that he had 59% completion, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 87 QBR, which, he's a rookie, but 2-2, I mean, sure, whatever. You want to put him as your hope? Sure. But I don't know. Let's hope he stays healthy. That's all I say.
All right. Then for Jacksonville, extra rubber for Trevor or upgrades up front.
What? Extra rubber for Trevor?
Yeah, he's got extra protection this year. They upgraded the O-line.
2 condoms now?
Yeah.
Is this just like an analogy for his offensive line or some shit?
Yeah.
His offensive line's dog shit because, I don't know, they draft guys. They can't draft people who have short arms. Is that their thing? Okay. All right. This is already off to a great start.
And then the Titans, they put the roster changed.
Couldn't we have said that about, I don't know, the rest of the teams? Did the Bills roster change? Pretty sure it did.
They gave him this idea for an article. He just gets to the Titans. He's like,
changes were made.
Yeah, the roster
changed. Calvin
changed.
Ridley, D-Hop, Will Levis, the potential of Will Levis. Couldn't have put a new head coach. Couldn't have put new players on defense. Nope. The roster changed.
Yeah. Speaking of coaches and heading out west, the Denver Broncos, they put coaching staff. So, the guy who had a ego meltdown because he wanted to get rid of Russ, and Russ wanted to play and he wanted to protect that salary or draft picks or whatever. He was mad at Russell Wilson. Then he attacked his quarterback any chance he got and got a guy who says he's great at golf, really good at golf, young or their old rookie quarterback. Coaching staff for the Broncos.
Oh, you mean the coaching staff that's going to be replaced by the end of the season because they're going to go 1-16 according to the Brickyard?
1-16.
Yeah. 1-16 is what we put them at.
But it's not Sean Payton's fault.
No, it's not. No, it's never Sean Payton's fault. Of course not. Well, when they roll out Jared Stidham at the start of the season, and then he sucks, they put in Zach Wilson. He sucks, and they put in Bo Nix. It's going to be a sight to see. But that team's going to be god awful because they have nobody at all. So coaching staff, I mean, hopefully they can coach wonders. Maybe it'll be Miracle on Ice or some shit, but they need a hell of a lot more than coaching.
Yeah. And then after that, with the Chiefs, he just put, is anyone overlooking Kansas City when he could have just put Patrick freaking Mahomes? What? Why is anyone overlooking them?
I don't think anybody's
He says it would be pretty silly to overlook them in his paragraph. Come on, bro. You can't be using words like silly.
Well, also, who's overlooking the 2-time defending champions? Like,
No one.
nobody. More people are going to put them to win this year than any other team in the AFC because it's a safe bet. They're on pace to potentially be the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight. Nobody's overlooking them. And they got better. So, yeah. No, and plus, don't say the word silly, dude. You're in your fucking 30s, probably. You can't say silly. Once you get past the age of 13, you can't say silly anymore.
Yeah, come on, dude. Clean out your closet. What are you doing?
Clean out your closet like Eminem did.
And then we have Vegas, and they say, unlike Gen Z, they have an identity, which is defense.
Interesting tagline. They do have an identity. I like Anthony Pierce a lot. I like Gardner Minshew a lot. Devontae Adams, he's pretty good at football. I think they're going to be really exciting. Whether or not they're a playoff team or not, we'll find out. But they do have an identity, and they will be good.
They do. And then after that, we have the Chargers, and he just says Jim Harbaugh wins. It's true.
He does win. Can
on
confirm.
and off the field.
He does win on and off the field. That interesting tagline. Yes, he does win. Winning percentage up for Jim Harbaugh. Very interesting tagline.
And then moving east in the NFC, the Cowboys, elite talent at the top. Unfortunately, that's only 3 players, but they do have some elite talent.
I think they should say elite talent for now, because this will be the last season that those elite talent players are on the Cowboys before they leave.
So they have an elite corner, an elite pass rusher, and an elite receiver, and that's it. Okay.
The streets will say Dak Prescott, but
Dak Prescott is
not
an elite. He's above average. We can't just be throwing around the elite button for quarterbacks.
The streets
That's
will say
like 4
Dak
guys.
Prescott. The streets will say Dak Prescott, and the streets are wrong because he is not elite. He's good, but he's not elite.
And then the Eagles, huge problem here. I don't know if they're Michael Scotting this, like how Michael Scott says his biggest strength is his weakness, but they say the Philadelphia Eagles, the reason you should believe in them next year is their experienced coordinators. You know, the guys who are experienced at failing everywhere they go? Yeah, those guys. Kellen Moore. Are you kidding me?
Kellen Moore's the OC, and then their DC is Vic Fangio, right?
Yeah.
Did they bring Vic Fangio on? 2 guys who have namesake but haven't really done. Kellen Moore was a failure with the Cowboys, and he was a failure with the Chargers, and now he's going to go to the Eagles. Should be easier with Saquon now, but the court really, you couldn't have just said added Saquon. You couldn't have said bounce back, like really, or Jalen Hurts, MVP candidate. You could have said their defense is still pretty solid. Like
Nick
lazy.
Sirianni will have his babysitter back on the sideline. Like
you could say AJ Brown. There's so many just names you could shout out there, but instead you say the worst part of their team. Okay, very cool.
And then now the team that started the segment, the New York Football Giants, pass rushing upside. It's true.
That's literally their only upside. That's literally the only good thing they can say. Because Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. Okay. And Bobby
Okereke.
Wait. We'll start that again. Bobby Okereke.
There we go. We'll get it.
Those 3, the 3-headed monster of those guys, that's their only highlight of the entire team. Offensive line's terrible. Their weapons, God, I feel bad for Malik Neighbors. I hope he demands to get cut and finds an opportunity. That's literally, I mean, I guess for what the segment's for, that's the one reason to believe in them. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's Agreed. Like the one thing he nailed so far. Good for him. Finally cleaning out the closet. And then after that, the Commanders. It's a new era.
Yeah. It is. He's right. It is a new era. They drafted a quarterback. They hired Dan Quinn. And so for that alone, it's a new era. Two things. Two in a row. It's on a hot
Now
streak.
they just need to fix the stadium, sign elite players, and change
their
the name.
Yeah. Change their name to anything else. Make it so their stadium doesn't kill people. Then they're
Honestly,
on.
a better name would be anything else. Introducing the Washington anything else.
I'm on board.
Yeah. It's like how people say for president, like anyone but these two, but then they don't vote in the primary. Yeah, the Commanders. Anyone but this in Washington. And then we move to the north with the Bears. Influx of offensive talent. Another closet cleaned out. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, DeAndre Swift. Yeah, there's a lot to like. And then obviously, front of the show, Cole Kmet. So I agree.
Yeah.
This guy's on a burner right now. He started off cold, now he's on a burner.
And then with Detroit too, might be another burner. Breakout looks sustainable.
Yeah, I agree. Jameson Williams is impressing in training camp too, so maybe they have their deep threat. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously he's a top 10 receiver in the league, so I think the Lions are we've said since the beginning that the Lions are legit. That's one of the first teams we were right about, so
Yeah. Think about how crazy this is. Jameson Williams hasn't played a full season yet. Whenever he has played, he was incredible in the playoffs. And then also another year for Jahmyr Gibbs and another year for Sam Laporta. And these guys are still young. Like, this team is still getting better. And Aiden Hutchinson for sure is still getting better, because that's a position where, as you keep adding muscle, technique, you're just going to know what teams are going to be throwing at you, and then it's not going to be a surprise. Then also another year for Benny Johnson and Jared Goff together as well. But I think this team is still set with their youth. That's the thing that people are writing them off for. Like, this isn't a veteran team that got bounced out of the playoffs. This is a team that's still very young and hungry, and they still love their coach, no matter his flaws.
Yeah. I think the oldest player I feel like on their team is probably Jared Goff, and Jared Goff is only 31. Like, he's not that old. They did lose Emmanuel Mosley. He'll be out indefinitely, but other than that, I mean, they've made enough moves in the draft and they're deep in the people that they've moved and drafted with that you should feel confident with the Lions in that division.
Yeah, definitely. And then after the Lions, they go to the Green Bay Packers and they say, youth propelled late season ascent.
Well, I think that's he's just saying what happened last year. He's just summarizing it. But yes, I agree. They are very young and they are very good. In fact, they're a team that honestly is horrifying. If I'm the Lions, I'm looking at the Packers specifically, who have owned the division the last 30 years. And I'm like, Jordan Love got paid. They got Josh Jacobs. All of their receivers who were good last year are going to be even better. That team's scary. The Packers are a scary team.
How funny would it be if Jordan Love just got paid after 1 year and then sucks?
That would be hilarious, actually.
I think that's what everyone's rooting for, to be honest, because some people still think he sucks, even though he destroyed the Cowboys.
Annihilated.
But after that, we have the Vikings, who's a team that Vikings fans definitely need a reason to hope in. They say skill position upside.
What do you mean upside? It's just skill positions that are good. There's no upside. It's they have the best receiver in the league, and they have a really good player in Jordan Addison and T.J. Hawkinson. It's not about upside. They
Aaron
have
Jones too,
and Aaron Jones, pretty damn good himself. There's no upside. It just is. They just have good receivers. That's it.
Yeah. Skill position. You could have just said Justin Jefferson was graceful enough to actually return and sign and stay in Minnesota.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson was nice enough not to ask for a trade.
Yeah.
And then the Falcons. Get ready for this one. Kirk Cousins, a rival. That's it.
That's the hope. Is Kirk Cousins? He will save the Falcons. Get them out of the ashes of 28-3. We love to see it. And
The
Arthur
Panthers,
Smith.
though.
Here we go.
This one is stupid, and I might actually
Tepperville.
have to read the whole thing. Refreshed offense.
Refreshed offense.
He says, Bryce Young should never look at his rookie tape. Burn it forever. Without question, the number one pick of the 2023 draft contributed to Carolina's woes in the league's worst teams. Still, instability in the coaching staff and his mediocre supporting cast didn't help him. David Canales isn't a lock to unlock Young's ability, and neither are the Panthers' big name additions, but the outlook is much better in 2024, meaning instead of jack shit, you have shit.
Is that what he wrote?
The fuck? Yeah, that's what he wrote. That was the whole paragraph under the tagline. And he basically said that even though things are still shit, it's not as shit as the shit that was before.
Well, do I think they'll be better than last year? Deontay Johnson's better than Laviska Shenault and Terrence Marshall, I guess, but they are still dog shit. I don't think that they've upgraded from dog shit. I think one thing is that, whether it's a Chihuahua dog shit or it is a pit bull dog shit, it's still dog shit at the end of the day. So saying that one is better than the other, you're looking at two piles of turd and saying that one is better than the other. Like, no, they're both terrible. They're going to be the worst team. Maybe they win 3 games instead of 2, but they're still dog shit. At the end of the day, don't say that they've upgraded. No. When you actually think about it deeper, they also lost Frankie Louvu and Brian Burns.
So, they're worse.
So their offense, yes, they added the pivotal wide receiver 1 of Deontay Johnson. Riveting. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You added Deontay Johnson, a guy who has not had a 1,000-yard season in 3 seasons, and also had 0 touchdowns 2 years ago. That's the guy that you pick up, and who also has a history of drop issues, but I'm sure he'll be great for you. You lost 2 of your best players, period, on your team, and that was literally what helped you win your 2 games that you won, was with those 2 players and how good their defense was in those only 2 games. So, no, they're still dog shit. Like, they didn't upgrade from dog shit. They went from dog shit to dog shit. They've stayed the same.
Yeah.
End of rant.
I agree. And, well, you still have the same owner, too. You didn't even talk about Cocaine. I'm blanking on his name right now.
David Tepper.
Yeah, Cocaine Tepper.
Cocaine Tepper. Soon to be the sequel of Cocaine Bear.
Probably, yeah. If it's not the Sharks first. But he'll at least be the final piece of that trilogy. And with the Panthers, you should give yourself one pass and just be like how Chris Helmsworth was in the Mad Max trailer, because no one actually watched the movie, was, there is no hope! Where are you going? There's no hope!
No, you're screwed.
Just admit it. You don't have to make one for every team. Give yourself a pass. Because the Saints is an even dumber reason. You know what the reason is? The promising end of 2023.
Okay, well, let's fact check that real quick.
What?
I need to look at this real quick. What did they do the last leg of the season?
They finished 4-1. And Derek Carr had 14 touchdowns and 2 picks.
Okay. Did they make
Defense
the playoffs?
held the opponents to 17 points a game in each win.
I mean, I guess they really got to stretch.
I mean, that's actually pretty good. Like 4-1. But that's when all the pressure's off and you already know you're going to miss the playoffs. How about you succeed when you actually have a chance to still make it, you know?
Okay, well, let's poke holes in that real quick. Yes, they went 4-1. However, they annihilated the Patriots, right? Actually, hold on. Look at the wrong games. Okay, they beat the Panthers, the Giants, the Falcons, and they had a good win against the Bucks. December 30th, but they lost to the Rams, which they were losing by a lot, and then they came back and almost won, but they still lost at the end of it. And then 2 of their wins are against 2 of the worst teams in the league. 1 win against a playoff team, the Bucks, and then the Falcons, who I think
Isn't
were
that when
playing
Arthur
Taylor
Smith,
Heineke.
Isn't that when Arthur Smith lost a neck vein yelling at Dennis Allen?
Yeah,
Too.
I'm
At the end of the
sure.
game, how could you give Jamal Williams a touchdown, even though he hasn't had one all year? It's so insensitive.
Yeah.
Turned into a massive Karen.
Oh yeah, because he's on the Saints still. Yeah, because they scored a touchdown and he fucking freaked out and went all Karen mode on him because he's a baby.
Yeah, somehow he looked like more of a suburban mom than Dennis Allen did, which is hard to do, by the way. If you're a fan of the show, you know this. And then Tampa, just like Jack Harlow said in What's Poppin', Baker's got options.
Very nice.
Okay, Mike Evans is still there.
I hate this guy.
Who does he have besides Mike Evans?
He's got Chris Godwin. He's got Cade Otton.
Okay.
Rashad White.
And then
they're the same options as last year.
Yeah. He has options. Good for Baker.
He had them last year.
And then after that, we have Arizona rounding it out in the West here. And he says, Gannon has a plan. And I also have a plan to make $1 billion. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I have a plan too. A lot of people have plans. The 49ers had a plan to win the Super Bowl last year. Did it happen? No. They got close, but
they just forgot what overtime rules meant. I think you could have put just Marvin Harrison Jr. I think you could have put Kyler Murray's back for a full season, and that would have been a better reason for hope. But instead, you put Jonathan Gannon, who has a plan. What is
I would have lied in this article if I was thinking of the Cardinals. I would have just said Kyler grew.
Kyler grew to 6'10". He's perfectly tall now.
Yeah.
He's actually now the tallest quarterback in the league.
He's finally desirable.
He took 12 inches of height. He was taking height pills, and now he is officially a giant.
Yeah. Kyler figured out Viagra is not the only thing. It grows more than one thing.
Did you see that they have they're issuing now in their games they're going to have what's called a cotton candy burrito?
In what?
In Arizona, they have a cotton candy burrito. It's a cotton candy wrap, and in the middle of that is fucking Fruit Loops.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Combines your 2 favorite things, Mexican and Fruit
Loops. Sugar. I'm like cotton candy and rice. I'm like, so it's just gonna be a sugar burrito. That's all it is. Cotton candy is literally just sugar air. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it
cotton
tastes
candy.
Paper.
Yeah, the only cotton candy I'll eat is the maple cotton candy.
Yeah, cotton candy's overrated.
Yeah, it's there's no real way to eat it. You look like a douchebag after. You just have syrup all over your face. Pull yourself together.
Get a grip.
And then after that, we have the Rams and so much offense.
True. Very true.
It's true.
Good running backs, good receivers. Matt Stafford. We love it.
His closet got extremely messy again, but at least he moved a sock or 2 out of it again. He's back on the winning team.
Yeah.
And then the 49ers, he just puts again, who's doubting San Francisco? And to me, that's just a very unfair premise because I think there's plenty of reasons to doubt San Francisco because Kyle Shanahan has proved not once, but twice, if he's in a position to utilize his greatest skill, which is, I don't know, running the football, And if he does that, that's all he has to do. He'll win the game. He won't do it. And then he's also shown that he'll forget the NFL rules at a given moment. As like not a given moment, the biggest moment. He forgot, like, oh yeah, overtime. The team that gets the ball first scores, or you get 2 opportunities now in the playoffs to score. So why not kick off and then receive it? And he's like, oh, after we actually wouldn't have changed anything, we still would have gotten the ball first. Like bullshit. You could have held the Chiefs to a field goal, and then the pressure wouldn't have been on you as much.
No, he's proven to be a choker 3 separate times now. He choked away a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of the first Super Bowl. Then he did it again with them this last Super Bowl, and then he did the 28-3 game. Like,
yeah,
you are now defined as a choker. Like, you're a choking head coach. You're never going to win a Super Bowl, and now you're going to lose Brandon Aiyuk, and then all these other players are getting older. Like, there are plenty of reasons to doubt the 49ers now. Like, they're still going to be good, but they're not going to – I don't think they're going to go back to the Super Bowl.
What's that thing that always repeats itself? History?
Mm-hmm.
History buff on the show. How often does a team that loses the Super Bowl get back and win? Like, not very often. Not recently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's ever been an excuse. Maybe the Chiefs, but that's it. Because the Chiefs, oh no, they lost to the Bengals that year.
Though.
Well, they lost to the Bengals the following year.
Yeah,
because they lost to the Bucs and then they lost to the Bengals. Yeah, so no, not even the Chiefs. So maybe the Patriots. The Patriots are all I can think of, but Patriots are also an outlier, like Tom Brady.
Mahomes and Brady, maybe 2 of the greatest head coaches of all time, or quarterbacks of all time, and then you also have the perfect coach for both of those players. Like, yeah, those would both be outliers. But remember last time the Niners made the Super Bowl, the year after, literally every single player on their team of note got hurt. Who's to say that won't happen again? Christian McCaffrey's already banged up in training camp. Like, it's hard to get back to the Super Bowl.
That's remember
an unfair premise. Who's doubting the Niners? Like, history.
Do you also know what injury he got? He got a calf sprain. When he missed time with the Panthers, what did he have? A calf sprain. When he missed time the year after that, what did he have? A calf sprain. Like, this is an injury that he's had a lot. Like this, and he's also older now. And he has the Madden curse to be worried about. And the Super Bowl curse. He's got a lot of curses on his mind. I wish the best for Christian McCaffrey. I really do. Christian McCaffrey, Hall of Fame running back, 100%. One of the best, maybe if not the best running back of our generation. But, like the 49ers, they're not making it back.
Yeah. Also, Debo, you're trading away Brandon Aiyuk. Okay. Maybe you drafted a really good receiver that we don't know about because we're stupid. We're not scouts. We're not in the organization every day. We don't know as much as Kyle Shanahan. Like, there's a pretty good chance that that's the case. Okay. But at the same time, Debo has been hurt the past few years. George Kittle has been hurt the past few years. And Christian McCaffrey hasn't really been banged up with the 49ers, but those carries are going to start to take a hole because Brandon Aiyuk is going to leave a gap to fill, and I think they can fill it, but also your defense may take a step back as well.
Yeah, your defense could take a step back. Plus, also, George Kittle is old at this point. He's past the year 30 now. And then at that point, like, let's look at, like, the Eagles last year. First 11 games, they looked great, and then they fell apart. And then you go back, the Bengals, the year after, they fell apart. They made the Super Bowl, they fell apart. The Rams didn't make it back to the promised land. Like, all these teams that make the Super Bowl is such a longer run than you'd think. Playing an extra 3 games, maybe 4 if you're not the 1 seed, it's grueling on the body. Like, rather than playing 17 games, you're playing 21. That's the difference between getting banged up and needing surgery at the end of it. Yeah. So,
and there's an extra week in between with the Pro Bowl too, where you're still practicing. Like, so it's like an extra month working when everyone else gets a month off. Like, how much do you think an extra month, especially when it becomes to recovering your body, unless you're like sleeping in cow pajamas, like, not everyone's going to bounce right back from that. And not everyone has the mental attrition to do so. And most people in the world don't, which is why they're not professional athletes.
Yeah, plus like when do training camps officially start? Like we have training camp now, obviously, but like off-season OTAs when you need to be in shape, like those begin in what, May, April? Like it moves pretty quick.
Yeah,
You
after
still
the
need to be in
draft,
shape
probably
too.
like mid-May.
Yeah, you still need to be in shape too. Like it's not just like you bounce back and there's nothing there. Like it's a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a false premise with the Niners, and people should be worried about them. And I don't think there's any way they get back to the Super Bowl. There is a way, but this could be a year where we finally see the Niners fall apart a little bit because it's just a hard thing to do. And then after the Niners, rounding out this list with the last team to believe in, it says defensive wizardry.
With the Seahawks,
Yeah.
I mean, I like some of their players, but I don't know if wizardry is the right word. With them there, I feel like their defense has been underperforming really since the Legion of Boom with all the great players that were there with like Earl Thomas, who's up for the Hall of Fame, Marshawn Lynch, he was up for the Hall of Fame, and just like the days with like Russ and the rest of that team.
Yeah, his reason is because Mike McDonald was the coordinator for the Ravens last year,
That's
who's
right.
now their head coach, and he thinks it's going to help out Reek Woolen in that secondary. So he thinks the secondary for the Seahawks will actually be really good this year, and the defense just having a new voice with that team probably could help because if you're a new player coming into Seattle, how many times do you think Pete Carroll mentioned the old era when you really just need to turn the page? And usually, unless it's a Bill Belichick, who's also like the GM, and you have Brady there still, like Russell Wilson isn't there, like it's time to close the chapter. And unfortunately, usually that means moving on from your head coach. And maybe we finally do see the second chapter of the Seattle Seahawks. But a cause to pause also, I would put with the Seahawks is that their coach is a defensive head coach, and that doesn't always work out in a modern NFL.
Most of the time, it doesn't. I mean, you look at the head coaches, the last 8 teams that were in the playoffs last year, how many of them were offensive minded and how many of them were defensive minded? Really, you have Dan Campbell. Well, Dan Campbell's an offensive minded. He's a tight end. So
Yeah, he's a tight end. Everyone
yeah,
thinks he's
so
defense just because he is like a
the,
rah guy, and usually that's the defensive guys.
yeah, I mean that's who you usually you would think he would be a defensive player, head coach, but he played tight end. John Harbaugh,
No, he's a special teams guy.
special team. Yeah, so like it's not Andy Reid, it's not
D'Amico
John
Ryans,
Harbaugh,
maybe.
it's not Kyle Shanahan, it's not maybe Sean McDermott, but he
Sean
didn't make it that
McDermott,
far.
Mike Tomlin, and D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, and on the other side, wasn't Matt LaFleur.
Dennis Allen is a defensive head coach, not going great.
I'm just thinking about playoff teams last year, like Todd Bowles. That's it.
Yeah.
Like on the NFC side, it was like Todd Bowles and everybody else was offensive minded. Everybody else have offensive minded head coaches.
Yeah. Even Mike McCarthy's an offensive guy, as bad as he is.
Yeah. Well, it's all right. He won't be a head coach long for the Cowboys.
Yeah. But speaking of the Seahawks, starting a new chapter, Russell Wilson currently off the field right now, also dealing with a calf injury. He got injured pushing a sled, working out with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now Justin Fields is getting a lot of reps, and he's kind of locked in this quarterback battle. And honestly, with Russ and Justin Fields, I really don't care who they start. And honestly, if Russ is hurt, I wouldn't mind giving Justin Fields more reps in training camp and then starting him. But Russell Wilson is someone who was in Seattle, on track for the Hall of Fame. His idol was Drew Brees, and people are like, oh my God, he's like if Drew Brees had legs and could run around the pocket. And they were putting him up there with Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, putting him right there at number 5 in the top 5 most of the time. And then he doesn't have the Legion of Boom anymore, doesn't really have any playoff success without that defense and Marshawn Lynch there, and then calls his own number, goes to the Broncos, and then Pete Carroll's like, all right, have a nice day, have fun in Denver, and then has one of his worst years as a pro in Denver, and then you have to make like a stats argument last year to really argue for Russell Wilson being good when he was a fine, passable quarterback, kind of harmless, but not worth the money that you were paying him, which is really why people criticize Russell Wilson last year. Now he's in Pittsburgh. What would his legacy really say if he gets beat out by Justin Fields for the starting quarterback position? I mean, is this one of the biggest falls from grace in media, or is it just because he went to another team before he sucked like Cam Newton did?
I think with Russell Wilson, the thing that he's going to fall victim to is, I think, recency bias, and then also like with recency bias, people repainting the past. Because you look at Russell Wilson's stats, like his numbers are good, but when you look back at history, like he had 140 touchdown season, and then he had a couple of high 35
with his
touchdown
rushing
seasons.
touchdowns?
What's that?
Is that 40 total or passing?
Passing. And then rushing touchdowns, he maxed out at 6 in 2014, and otherwise it's been about 3. But he kind of stopped running after 2017. After that, we're looking at like 350 yards per game per season, roughly. And that also includes 6 to 10 fumbles per season. So he was notorious for fumbles as well. So like, he also never has an MVP vote. You also look at the Legion of Boom, you can say kind of ended right around like 2016. And since 2016, his playoff record was 2-4. So like, I think
Since
when you look back at
2016?
Since
2016? 2-4?
Since 2016, he was 2-4, and I believe was 2016 the year that he faced the Packers. I'm trying to see, or is that 2015? I'm thinking of the Brian Bostic game. So they faced the Lions. Never mind, different season. No, so I think with Russell Wilson, what's going to happen is if he continues to suck with the Steelers or gets beat up by Justin Fields, who I don't think is very good at this point. I've kind of sold my stock on him. It's going to repaint history. I mean, it's bad enough that you saw, like, even someone like Matt Ryan, like when he left the Falcons, he sucked in Indianapolis. And I think his legacy was already submitted with 28-3. So I think his legacy will be just the same. But Russell Wilson, he was a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. And I think at this point, it wasn't just that he was bad in Denver. It was the fact that he was so bad that they decided to cut him with the largest dead cap hit in the history of the NFL just to get out of the contract. We're talking $85 million to get out of his contract. He was that bad. Then there's talks about the Legion of Boom players, like pretty much everybody on the Legion of Boom, talking down about Russell Wilson and how he's a bad leader, how he's hard to get in touch with. And then all of this noise around him, like, I think it's a really bad sign. I think he'll still be a Hall of Famer just because of his impact on the mobile quarterback. But, man, I don't know. I think he went from a surefire Hall of Famer to, like, not a first ballot Hall of Famer, probably eventually a Hall of Famer sort of status.
Yeah, it's tough because you mentioned like he has a season with 40 touchdowns, but it's like if you play the game where you remove his worst season and his best season there, you get some pretty good to mediocre play, but at the same time, like the Super Bowl he won, it's like when you're thinking about Hall of Fame, and we'll get to this later with Eli Manning, but like Eli Manning impacted those Super Bowls. Eli Manning made plays to propel his team to the win. What did Russell Wilson do to win the Super Bowl? It was over after Percy Harvin returned the kickoff for a touchdown. Peyton Manning had the snap go over his head. Like, it was a weird Super Bowl. And then in Denver there. And then what did he do in the New England Patriots Super Bowl when he had to make the play when it was on his shoulders to go out there, stick it to the Patriots, force Tom Brady out of New England and Jimmy Garoppolo into the driver's seat in the next seat with the chance to retire Tom Brady. Bill Belichick would finally be able to see this guy isn't good enough. I can finally start Jimmy G. And Russell Wilson said, hey, Malcolm Butler, here you go. Also have fun getting benched in the next Super Bowl. It's like when it was on Russ to perform in the Super Bowl, he turned it over. But when they won the Super Bowl, it was kind of just an overwhelming domination at the special teams and defensive level. And then Russell Wilson was kind of along for the ride. And in retrospect, when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, it does kind of more look like Russell Wilson was a very good player who was along for the ride instead of an elite player like a Roethlisberger, like a Rodgers, like a Brady, like a Lamar, who's pushing their team over the top, or like even a Cam Newton, I think had more impact, even though he didn't win a Super Bowl, on the Panthers' success than Russell Wilson did in Seattle. And I think recency bias will play a part in Russell Wilson's Hall of Fame case. And if we see him get benched for someone like a Justin Fields, we see him have the greatest dead cap of any NFL player. That's how bad he was. That's how bad they wanted to get rid of him. If I'm a voter, I'd be like, can I tell the NFL story without him? And I think that's really the criteria. Yes, I can. Because if we talk about mobile quarterbacks, do I have to mention Russ? Absolutely not. I can mention Lamar, who I think is better than Russell Wilson. I can think of Cam Newton, who I think is more powerful. And I can mention Michael Vick, who is the first to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, like, when you look at the Legion of Boom again, like, there's now at this point, with how long it's been since the Legion of Boom, we're starting to see them enter the Hall of Fame conversation. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, just about the Hall of Fame class that's coming up this year. But with that, you look at him more as a game manager than you do him as like this elevating talent. You look at he never had an MVP vote, which I think is going to come back to haunt him. You're going to look at his playoff performances, just in general. Like his playoff performances are really not that special. The year that I talked about that he had, the year that he had the 40 touchdowns, he faced the Rams in 2020, and he completed 33% of his passes. He went 11 for 27 that game. He got sacked 5 times. His QBR was abysmal.
Wait, 2020?
Yeah, 2020. The last year with Jared
Was that
Goff.
COVID?
No, this is the last year. So this was January 9th of 2000 and I guess it's 2021. But this was the last year with Jared Goff that they had. And he was 11 of 27. It was terrible in that game. Abysmal. So if you look at Russell Wilson, the more the career unraveled, you notice that it was them falling short in the playoffs. And it would never be his fault. Never be Russell Wilson's fault. Kind of like a LeBron-esque narrative with him, where it was never his fault. They wouldn't do anything in the playoff games, and then it would always fall back on the defense or the offensive line. It was never his fault. And now we look back on this year, like, you can mention him for rushing if you want to. Like, I think that for really just 1 or 2 major seasons, he was a big running quarterback, but that's not really what he's more of as like an improviser than he is like a mobile quarterback. Think about mobile quarterbacks today. You'll think like Lamar, Cam Newton, you'll think of Michael Vick, and then like touching upon that, like hell, even Justin Fields will be mentioned just for having that 1,000-yard season. You'll think of Josh Allen. And there's plenty of other figures that could be mentioned there. Anthony Richardson, if he's good.
Yeah.
But Russell Wilson could just be kind of an anecdote of the Legion of Boom, which is kind of sad for people who grew up with him. But at the same time, like, I think he kind of did it to himself. And then going to Denver being as bad as he was, I think he kind of did it to himself.
Yeah, and honestly, I think he'll be a forgettable player. Like, I don't think he's someone who's always going to be on the front of people's mind, like in the barbershop, when you're having the conversation. Like, there was one point where you could argue, people will argue like he's the best quarterback in the league, but like, what a fall from grace. Because like all the running quarterbacks you just mentioned there, and the fact like that he was so hard to get in touch with, where you have teammates like you want me to go through your agent to get in touch with you? That's kind of something Eminem said is okay to say. Like, that's kind of weird, bro. So I think ultimately that will play a part. And just him, like, you look at the Super Bowl they won, overwhelming domination, and then look at the Super Bowl they lost. Why'd they lose? You could
Yeah.
blame it on Pete Carroll, but Russell Wilson, like, also made the pass when he could have threw it away.
I have a really weird comparison with him, and I think he's better than this player. But if you know, like,
Okay.
2000s quarterbacks, there was a player in the 2000s who was like kind of known for his mobile abilities, and then he left Minnesota and he fell off a cliff, and he's just a relic of history now. Dante Culpepper. Dante
Hmm.
Culpepper, if you look at his numbers, he was a Pro Bowler. He was a really solid player. He had 40 touchdowns one season, and then he left to go to Miami, and he was terrible in Miami. And then he was terrible in Miami. He went to Oakland. He was terrible in Oakland. Went to Detroit. Was a part of the 0-16 Lions. Was god awful. And he has become like kind of like a relic of the past. Like nobody thinks about him. 2004, he throws for 39 touchdowns, 11 picks, and he has leads the league in passing, QBR of 110, in the conversation for the MVP. And then the 5 years following that, he's 5-22 as a head like starting quarterback, 20 touchdowns, 32 picks, and a QBR of 71. I think he could become the Dante Culpepper of this generation
Yeah.
with just how much he's fallen off.
Yeah, that's a
Maybe,
fair comparison. Like, he's definitely better, but isn't everyone better statistically the further on football goes? And also, like, that season you mentioned, was it like the 2020 regular season in the NFL that Russell Wilson had that? Like, wouldn't that still be COVID when the stadiums were empty, so it'd be easier to put up those numbers?
yeah, this was Jared Goff on the team, and it was January 9th of 2021. So yeah, it was COVID season still.
Yeah, so if it was like the empty stadiums, then like everyone's stats were inflated that year a little bit in the NFL, and then also like we saw like the shooting in the NBA, and, like how much like Duncan Robinson, like how many people got paid from like the bubble in the NBA and like in the NFL. Like, okay, if your best season was when fans weren't there and that's when you had 40 touchdowns, that's also a little bit of cause to pause for me.
Yeah, I think one last thing about Russell Wilson too is I think he'll be remembered like I mentioned Dante Culpepper, but then also like how people in the NBA will think about like um, Jason Williams, Jamal Crawford, players who were good players of their time, but they weren't memorable enough to make the Hall of Fame or good enough to make the Hall of Fame. They're more of
Right.
like they're more like really good players than they are like legendary players. And unfortunately, like Derrick Rose is another conversation of that too. Like players who were really good for a short period of time, and then whether it be
That's
injuries or them
so
just falling
mean.
off a cliff, they just suck.
Don't do that to Derrick Rose. He deserves better than that. He won an MVP. He
He
was
won.
arguably the best player in the league, not named LeBron. Like, don't do that. That's so
Uh,
mean.
I mean, I think Kobe deserves a shout in that conversation too.
Kobe?
But well, yeah, because he won it in what 2008 when
The
Derrick.
MVP for Derrick Rose?
Yeah, he won the rookie year, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was arguably the best player in the league because, Kobe went out there and lost to Paul Pierce
Well, he won the next
that
year.
year. The next year, yeah.
But I think he'll be more of like at a barbershop, like, oh, you remember this guy? Kind of like how we have those conversations when you're at the bar with your buddies, like, oh, he was really good, but like that's kind of the argument that's going to be with Russell Wilson. Like, oh, he was good, but if he didn't leave Seattle, what would he be?
Yeah. I feel like one big argument too at like the barbershop, wherever you are, whether you're getting a massage on your head or getting fucked up, is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? Is he? Because he's officially, now is the time to decide if Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer or not. And I think he's going to make the Hall of Fame. But the fact is, does he deserve to make the Hall of Fame? And we have this year's Hall of Fame class pulled up, and it is pretty stacked. Not going to lie. I think most of these people deserve to make the Hall of Fame. But When I say Eli Manning, Hall of Famer, does that strike you as something where you're like, yes, or you're like, well, I don't
I think
know.
he's a Hall of
Led the league in
Famer.
pick 3 years? Like,
I think he's a Hall of Famer, but I think he's a Hall of Famer because he's a Manning, and you can't talk about the NFL history without him. And he has enough long-term stats. Like he's 10th all time in passing. He's got 366 touchdowns. Like I think there's enough bad or worse quarterbacks all time there with him. Plus, also he beat the undefeated Patriots, and then he beat the Patriots again the following year. So you can't really talk about NFL history without Eli Manning. So if you follow that mantra, like he's a Hall of Famer, but I think it's enough to be like, is he a Hall of Famer? I think there's enough question there that you can kind of go both ways with it.
yeah. And with everything you said there, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer just because he's a Manning. And if
Yeah.
you talk about the story of the NFL, you can't really talk about the NFL without the Mannings. They're like the Bushes in politics, or the Clintons. He's kind of like the Hillary Clinton of the Mannings at this point. But yeah, I think Eli Manning's probably going to make it. And I think when you judge the Hall of Fame, it should be partly with your regular season stats, but I think the playoffs should matter, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, like taking in context their help. But if you have 2 signature wins when you're the one leading your team down the field to secure the victory, even though the defense did play a big part in it, you still beat Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl, and you handed him one of 3 losses in the Super Bowl when you did better throughout your career against Brady than your older brother Peyton did until the end of his career. But we don't really count Denver because Manning really wasn't himself then. But I think if you have 2 signature wins, that's not a fluke. And I would even make the same argument for Nick Foles. If Nick Foles won 2 Super Bowls with the Eagles, hell yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. He won 2 Super Bowls as the quarterback. And Eli Manning, when he went on those runs, you're like, who's this guy? It's like your friend who you like go out with once in a while, and then you get him out like twice a year, turns into an absolute savage, and you're like, where have you been my whole life? Like, when did this side come out of you? I haven't seen it before, but I think I like it. And then the rest of the time, you're just like searching for that moment again. And I think that's kind of the story of Eli.
Eli Manning in his 2 playoff runs had 15 touchdowns and 2 picks, 2,000 yards, and a QBR at 100.
Dude, 2,000 yards in 8 games.
In 8 games. Yeah, so he averaged
Crazy.
like what, 275 yards a game or something like that. So he'd be on pace to go 16-0, 30 touchdowns, 4 picks, 4,000 yards in those games. And he's overall he's a good playoff performer. Like he had those other runs were middling, but those teams were a lot worse. But like I think part of it, you judge people on their regular season stats, right? Whether it be the NBA, NFL, or baseball, or whatever. But postseason is also where you can become a legend as well. And Eli Manning is like postseason icon. Him, Joe Flacco, Nick Foles, and then like obviously better quarterbacks. You think about like Brady, Mahomes. I'll throw Josh Allen in there because he's had some good playoff performances as well. And there's notable other people you can shout out too. But like Eli Manning will be a Hall of Famer because of his postseason, not his regular season.
Yeah. And I think that's fair too. And I think that should be like a criteria. I think 65% of the Hall of Fame should be based off your playoffs, and then 45% your regular season.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But outside of Eli Manning, we got a couple other notable people. We got Luke Kuechly, who his career was cut pretty short, but I mean, if we're talking about the 2010s, like maybe the best linebacker of the decade.
Oh yeah, without question. I mean, Luke Kuechly. I mean, he's one of those players when you watch when you're younger, you're like, oh, I don't want to get hit by that guy. It's like when you have like those questions, would you rather get hit by an actual car or get in a fight with Luke Kuechly? Like, I don't know, I might take the car.
Yeah, I think if we're building like our all-time favorite team on the defensive side, like Luke Kuechly is probably all-time favorite linebacker. He's up there.
Yeah,
He's
him and Thomas Davis were like such an iconic linebacker combo at the same time. It's like no question Luke Kuechly is a Hall of Famer, and linebacker, like that's a position that's fine if your career got cut short. Like it's not like Andrew Luck just being like, I don't want to play anymore. It's not
yeah.
like that. Like Andrew Luck definitely disqualified himself from the Hall of Fame, but like as a linebacker, like that's a position you can play 7 or 8 years and I'll still put you in the Hall of Fame.
Well, plus also like he had a couple of neck injuries, if I'm not mistaken. Like he had serious injuries. Like he couldn't play for. It came to a point where it wasn't safe for him to play anymore, and he kept
Yeah,
getting
he
hurt.
could.
Like he could have
I
kept
think.
playing.
Yeah, he probably. I think it was similar to like he probably would have gotten paralyzed, or he would have turned into Antonio Brown.
Yeah, and it's just like I've made my money. It's not worth it. So I think linebacker, especially when you're hitting people every play, then I think it's good.
Yeah,
Another player who I think should be shouted out because I hated him when he played because he was such a menace. But Terrell Suggs, 7-time Pro Bowler, won a Defensive Player of the Year, just like part of that Ravens culture. Like you have him, Ed Reed, and Ray Lewis. So you think of with the Ravens, like Terrell Suggs is
yeah,
now on the ballot. He's a Hall of Famer, 100%.
yeah. I definitely think former Arizona Cardinal Terrell Suggs should make the Hall of Fame. Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, that's what he's known for, playing for the Cardinals, playing for
Known for the
Kyler.
Cardinals.
I just remember he's like him and Ray Lewis together, like that linebacking core.
Oh,
They were just such villains. They were such just villains of the NFL. Like just tough, gritty, mean, just bullies of the NFL. And that's
yeah.
why I
I
think he's going
think
to be
they were
there.
kind of villains too because some people still question if Ray Lewis got away with, you know, doubling up, and then Terrell Suggs is just he's just one of those people that you could put him in like a John Wick movie and he would seamlessly fit in as a villain in like that realm.
100%.
Similar to like Boban when he was in the third John Wick. That was funny.
Yeah, exactly. And then another big linebacker here, we have Clay Matthews, who
Yeah. Huge linebacker class.
very big
2020.
linebacker
Is this
class.
2025 technically or 2024?
Yeah, this is 2025. These are just people who are going to be on the ballot. And another couple of notable names, Marshawn Lynch. We were talking about Legion of Boom earlier. Marshawn Lynch, who
Can everyone make the Hall of Fame on a ballot, or is
I
it
think
just like
it's
a yes or no, or do they have to leave someone off?
I think it's kind of similar to baseball, I think, where they can nominate 10 people to be in the Hall of Fame, and that's how they get in. So I think
Okay.
they'll make their ballot, and if Marshawn Lynch is there, then he'll be there. I don't think Marshawn Lynch is a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think he'll be a Hall of Famer eventually.
What,
Same
you don't
goes with
think he's a
Darren
first
Sproles.
ballot Hall of Famer? He was a top 3 running back in his era.
I know, but look at these people who are in the class, though, because you have Luke Kuechly, who I think has to be in there, Terrell Suggs, then there's other players from the other list, like Reggie Wayne, who didn't make it last year. Darren Woodson has to make it eventually. Um, Antonio Gates
Okay.
that didn't make it last year. Like, there's some players who I think should be there too. So if he's not a first ballot, and plus also the NFL of all Hall of Fame classes, they are the most annoying. To probably a top 3 running back, wide receiver of all time, was like a 5th ballot Hall of Famer. Like it doesn't make any sense. Randy Moss, same
Yeah.
idea.
He was like a problem though when Marshawn Lynch was just kind of like the Skittles guy. Like so far on this list, the only person I would leave off if I had to would be Eli because I think every other player is better at their position than Eli.
Yeah. Well, I think Eli will be a Hall of Famer. I don't think Eli would be a first ballot Hall of Famer, just with how he is. Um, but Marshawn, I'd be fine with Marshawn Lynch being a first ballot Hall of Famer. I just don't know whether or not he will be. I would put
Yeah.
him above Darren Sproles, who's also on this list. Darren Sproles,
Oh, for sure.
very good, but I don't. He might not be a Hall of Famer, honestly.
No. Sorry,
I think
Darren. He'd be
he
the
had a really
first
good.
person I'd be maybe fourth ballot if it's
Yeah,
a
like
bad
he had like a
class.
really good career, but I don't know if he's like a. I don't know if I'd put him in that same class with Marshawn. Then there's like Demaryius Thomas. He's on the ballot too.
He
But
is.
yeah,
Why? It was like, you know what? You know who we should put on the ballot for Hall of Fame this year? Demarius Thomas. Like,
he's not going to be there.
no. If
He's not making.
OJ wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, Demarius Thomas can't be on the ballot for at least 4 years after his career. That's insane. He had a really good year with Peyton Manning.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Peyton Manning broke every single touchdown record that year. Eric Decker looked like a star that year. Wes Welker was still playing that year. You were on one of the best offenses in the league. What did
of
he
all
do
time.
outside of Denver?
Where else did he play? The Patriots and Ravens?
Yeah.
He didn't
You
do
know what
anything
I
for the
don't
Patriots.
think about when I think about the Hall of Fame and wide receivers? Demarius Thomas.
Yeah, I think that's extremely fair. Um,
Okay.
so he's not going to make. I don't think he'll make the Hall of Fame. Speaking
He's
of
not on my ballot.
Broncos players, Aqib Talib, he's also on there as well.
Yeah, I would put him on above, maybe not a first ballot Hall of Famer because I felt like Aqib Talib was always in an elite duo. Because the Patriots had Aqib Talib and it was it Brendan Browner or Darrell Revis that year?
Both.
It was one of the two. And then he was also with Chris Harris Jr. And I felt like he was always like the physical corner, but he was never like the lockdown guy. He was always like
Yeah.
on the number 2 guy in the slot. So maybe like second or third.
I think if you talk about like 2010s, 2000s to 2010s, like corners, he'll be mentioned, but he's not the best. So he's not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Okay. Would you put Aqib or Eli above? That's, I guess, the question of this ballot.
I would put Aqib Talib above Eli because I think Eli will make it in eventually, but I don't think Eli should be a first ballot Hall of Famer because he's not a first ballot. His stats do not ring first ballot Hall of Famer levels.
Wow. There goes your invitation for the Manning cast. Right out the window.
Damn. Well, maybe they'll give it back to Tracy Morgan and he can go on his tirade.
Yeah, or Jimmy
Again.
Kimmel.
Or Jimmy Kimmel. Or who's the other guy? John Hamm. Remember when John Hamm was on? It was the most cursed interaction ever.
If I box someone, it's going to be John Hamm.
Make it happen. Chat, put that below.
Put it below. Who wins?
And then let's see. So outside of that, so we went over the Hall of Fame. A couple other small things to talk about. I know you mentioned we had a couple more articles.
College football?
Oh, what's that?
You played college football? Everyone said it's a great game. It's like this groundbreaking sports game. We've never had a game like it. I was like, college football. I played it. And I was like, it's a great game. Wow. What a game college football is.
I can say now, I've been playing college football for the last 2 weeks. College football is the most overhyped game of the year. I say this as somebody who has played Madden and had a 2K phase and has played, and I consider myself an avid sports gamer. So I know the ins and out of the sports games, and I know like what is a good game and what is not. And there's two things that can be true. It can be better than Madden, and it can be overhyped. I think there's things about this game that's exciting, like the recruiting and maybe the career mode's a little bit more fun than Madden. But it's not any different. It's really not that different. Like there's still that annoying track list. There's a couple of things that make college football not worth the hype. For one, the hype alone, people are acting like this is the greatest game ever made when it's not. It's literally, if you play this game, you'll be like, okay, this was made by EA. You'll know that. You'll know that EA made this game.
Yeah.
And then also, the career mode it's better than the Madden mode, but it also is because it's a college game and not an NFL game. Like, it's going to be like, oh, hit the books. Okay. Oh, there's NIL deals. Cool. I think Madden can still do better when it comes out next week.
Do they? So, like, in the career mode, like, one thing that would make it interesting is, like, seeing if you can get away with taking steroids. Like, they schedule your drug tests. So, like, and you have some random ones. And, like, if you take this steroid, it's like a free attribute boost, but you can, like, get away with it. Or, like, oh, if you smoke weed at this party, your career may never take off. Like, make it interesting where your career can actually fail by decisions you make it like actually like you actually decide whether or not you make it to the NFL or not. With like, you could make it funny, like, ooh, steroids, make them a part of the game.
Well,
You got injured,
they
take this.
they have these different quests where, like, you're invited to a party and you can, like, ditch class, or you can, like, cheat on the exam, stuff like that. I know. Whoa.
You cheated on the exam. What is it, like AP history or something? Well, not AP.
Something like that. But honestly,
whatever the dumb fish is.
I had fucking college football 2007, and it's still better. Like, college football 2007 was way better than this game. And then, dude, the track list. I
Like
played
the
this game
playlist?
for. I played the track. Yeah, the soundtrack of this game is the worst sports soundtrack of all time, and I mean that.
It's
After
worse than
20
NHL.
minutes, huh?
It's worse than NHL.
It is worse than NHL. It's fun for like 10 minutes because it's just college game day music, but the fucking drums in this game, it's like you're playing the game, you just hear the entire time. And picture this. Picture you're creating a player, or you're doing like dynasty modes, so you're like doing different trades, or you're doing recruiting, or whatever it might be, and it just it's this, and it doesn't. It's not like it eases out. It just keeps going and going and going for
So it's like
hours.
the college band, like the horny
Yes.
people.
And it's terrible. Like the soundtrack after 20 minutes, ultimately you either have to mute the game or you have to turn on Spotify for it. It's that bad. And then the mode that everyone's been hyping up the most has been the Dynasty mode. The Dynasty mode, everyone has been praising its glory. The Dynasty mode is not that fun. Like, it's such a grind. And if you're not a sweaty nerd or you have a job, it's not fun. Like, it's really not. Like, I just went through, I'm rebuilding the ASU Sun Devils, naturally. And, in Madden, like, you can trade for players and make your team better, and, like, you can build your team up a fun way, or you could do it the grind way. And the grind way is fun, but it also is exhausting after a day of work.
It's not fun.
In this game, you can't even edit the ratings of the players. Like, you can't make a 99 overall Brick Jameson who's an absolute monster at quarterback. No, you have to draft them. You have to do the 5-star recruits, but they won't let you be. They won't even take you seriously because you're the fucking Sun Devils, and the Sun Devils suck historically. So it's a real grind, man. It's really.
So you're just screwed if you don't choose like a Alabama, a Clemson.
It's sweaty.
They give all the power to the man in this game. That kind of sucks. Do they have the transfer? Do they have the transfer portal?
Yeah, they do. It's really hard, and I think the game is extremely overhyped. I think that's my main thing. Is like, is it fun? Is it fun that college football is back? Yes, but at the same time, it is highly overhyped, and I think that someone needs to say it. Like, it's not that good of a game. If I had to grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it like a 7 or maybe a 6.5. Like, it's
6.9.
6.
Not
Yeah,
quite a 7.
give it a funny score. Give it a 6.9. But when Madden comes out next week, if it's just as good as what college football is hyped up to be, I'll play Madden more because I think Madden gets too much hate personally.
Yeah, Madden definitely gets too much hate, and it's mostly from people who like play the career modes. And if you want to play that mode, that's fine. I simply just don't have time to do it. I'll start like a casual franchise or like just to chillax. I'll play a game once in a while, but I don't have time to just sit down and play 10, 4, 5 hours of a game every single night. Like, it's just not something I want to do at this point in my life. And like, especially with the video game, I'm looking for something for maybe a half hour to an hour to kind of chill out before bed or on a weekend. Maybe I'm feeling frisky and play 2 or 3 hours of an RPG game, but like not really looking to play like the off franchise modes. And like, I just base the game. Is it fun to play like a random game once in a while? If so, that's okay. Is the game completely broken and do you still have normal controls? Okay, that's fine. And with Madden, it's pretty easy. Like, okay, how many random, weird, goofy fumbles are there? Not that many. Pretty realistic. Okay, that's fine. 2K, how fucked up is the shot meter this game?
It's a
That's how I
nightmare.
judge it.
Yeah, it's a
And
nightmare.
2K will always notoriously be the most predictable game because even if you're down 30, you'll come back. Because 2K will just have moments where every dribble, every pass, every shot you take is a negative, but then it completely swings the opposite way. And then what they do right though over Madden, where I feel like Madden has more consistent and better gameplay, is it's way more interesting teams. Like you can play the legendary teams, you can play the 60s, 70s, 90s, 2000 or 2010s All-Stars. I think that's pretty cool,
Hmm.
especially with 2K. If I just want to play a random game once in a while, with Madden, I don't get that. But Madden, I feel like, is more fun overall to play because you don't have the shot meter change or you don't have to relearn a player every single game. And then like NHL, like once in a while. But like honestly, the most fun sports game I played recently is probably just UFC at this point.
Yeah, UFC's fun. I think Madden,
But like,
like the gameplay is fun. Like if you're just gonna go in and play a game randomly, I think you're gonna have the most fun there because I think the gameplay is pretty clean. I mean, there's glitches, but it's also a video game. Really, it's just the laziness of how they assemble like their franchise and my careers. But at the end of the day,
yeah.
like you have like 9 months to make the game. Like how much changes can you really make?
Yeah, in 2K, I feel like I have to play like a game and it's a complete throwaway if I play with a new team because I have to learn everyone's shot, have to get the timing down, and then I can play another game. And with 2K, I feel like the first game back you play in a while, they like make it really hard for no reason. I'm like, what is
Hmm.
this? So
Yeah,
it's
they
like you
put
have
you
to
through the
play with the
ringer.
same team every time to like just so you have the muscle memory for people's shot. Maybe I'm just bad at it. I don't know.
No, they put you through the ringer the first game. If you don't play 2K for like more than a month, they put you through the doghouse and you're just trash.
Yeah.
But
But
speaking of speaking of trash, another thing I wanted to vent about. As someone who is an avid Kanye West, big fan of his discography, right? Graduation, 808s and Heartbreaks, College Dropout. You list it. Like really up until Life of Pablo, like didn't have a bad album. In fact, all of his albums were classics and they were fantastic and part of history. Over the last, I would say, I think starting with Donda, but then definitely ever since his little Nazi phase that he had, music just isn't just not the same as it was. He released Vultures One earlier this year, and Vultures One was, I think, a solid album. He had Carnival on there; that was a big hit, and there was some really good moments on the album, and we enjoyed it. And then he released Vultures Two this past weekend, and I listened to it, my first listen through, and it was the first time as a Kanye fan um, where I'm like, yeah, that was bad. Like that was genuinely a bad. Like this is a bad album. There's I think 15 tracks, and I think I saved three of them, and the rest of them I hope to never explore again. Like he has a song "Bomb" where it's just his daughter, and I guess now there's just going to be a song for his daughter every album now, which is cute for him in North, but not for me who's listening, because listen to Bomb. It's easily his worst song ever.
Is
And this
it a
album,
bomb? Is it?
the
It's a
album is a
bomb.
bomb. The album is terrible.
Yeah.
The album is not good. The album is, I think, a 4 out of maybe 5 out of 10 if I'm being generous. Like it's a whiff. It's Kanye West whiff.
Yeah. Strong 3 to a light 2.
I think I would give it probably a. I think if I gave it anything, I'd probably give it a 4. I think 4 is a fair rating. There's good songs on it, but if you're looking at like a full track list, how many songs are you going to revisit? I think like there's probably 3 out of 15 that I would explore again, and the rest are just mid, unfinished. If you listen to 530, he doesn't even finish the verse. Like he has a whole section of the song where he's literally like mumbling the verse as if he never finished the song. So it's like, why are you releasing the album then? Are you just trying to be relevant? Because if you're trying to be relevant, make good music. Because when you make good music, you chart and people listen to your music again, like they did with Carnival. But in this, his songs are unfinished. They're lazy. They're just bad. That's all you can say.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, it's tough, but when an artist is like going for this long, and especially if he's trying to make a Vultures 2, like Vultures wasn't this amazing thing where I'm like, oh my God, I need a sequel to that. You know, an album I have heard from Kanye, I need a sequel to Graduation. Oh, wait, we got a sequel to that. And it was really good because he left you wanting more, especially in a movie. It's like if you end a movie and it's not on a cliffhanger, you perfectly wrap everything up. And it was a good movie. It was passable, but you're not like, I need a sequel tomorrow. I'm like, maybe the studio, if they take like 5 or 6 years and we get another one of those, I'm like, that was fun. Maybe I'll check that out. But like when you get it, within the same year? I mean, I think Vultures came out, was it this summer or last summer? I think
it came out in like April.
Yeah, it came out in like April. So I remember like bumping it earlier this year. So it's like it's not something that left me wanting more. Like with Eminem, we get Marshall Mathers, but we don't get Marshall Mathers LP2 for like a decade. And the first one was great. It left you wanting more. Something I'd want a sequel to is Yeezus. 808s and Heartbreaks too, if it was that. And Kanye's like, all right, we're taking it back to the boom bat movie cinematic theater style where Jesus comes on the gym and you're hopped up on pre-workout, you're just snorting it in your car and you're like, let's go, ah! You're ready to go, you know? But Vultures, I was like, yeah, that's
it was fun.
I don't want another one.
I mean, he was supposed to make Jesus 2, but he scrapped it to make Jesus is King. So
yeah,
that's
and
the
then he made
that we're working with.
What was the album where Donda? He tried to make Donda too, and Donda same thing. That Donda was more of like I felt like a poor man's Life of Pablo.
Yeah, it was super bloated. I mean, why did you have that Pop Smoke song on? The Pop Smoke song was like a minute long, and it had no business being on the album at all. Like you couldn't, and all the part twos. Like figure out which part you want to cut. It's the same song, but with different features. You just couldn't think about what to cut. So I don't know. I think at this point, it's safe to say he's past his prime, which is fine. I think when you think about artists, with someone who has the catalog of Kanye's, and we can use other artists, just for example, think of any great artist or band, right? Pink Floyd, Eminem, you can shout out some more, the Beatles, whatever it might be. Like, do you have your era of greatness, which I think for Kanye would be 2004 to 2016. That's just like college dropout to Life of Pablo. And then after that is when he goes a different direction. Eminem, Slim Shady LP to it ends with probably like Relapse or Encore or whatever it might be. And then out comes Recovery. And then it's the next phase of his career. Like every artist has their golden run, and then after that's gone, you should just be happy that they have a good album, because after that, you're not going to get that same level of quality. Like they've kind of reached their peak, just like in the NFL and just with other sports. Like you have your peak, and then when you fade her off, it's like as long as you're still good, that's how you'll be remembered, I suppose.
Yeah, and it just gets harder to be original, especially when you've been in that mode for so long. Especially for Kanye, because Kanye is someone I don't really think of him as a lyricist. Like he's a good rapper, but like when I think of like great rappers, does Kanye come to the top of my mind? No, but when I think of sounds and changing the schematic of hip hop, Kanye does come to mind. With every album he released, it seemed like, okay, we get something new and it almost shifts the sound of what hip hop sounds like. Where with Eminem, he kind of inspired a style of rapper, not necessarily sound. Same with Travis Scott. You think of the sound of his music, you don't really think that Travis Scott is a great lyricist, and I don't think anyone would really make that case. Kendrick, do you think of the sound of his album? I guess so, because he like changes every time, but the sound isn't as iconic as his pen. That's always what's shining at the top of his music. That's why people think he's boring, because they're like, "Oh, Kendrick's boring." It's like, did you not hear what he just put down, and do you not hear the messaging of what Kendrick's saying? Um, Same with Tupac. I think of more like substance over sound, but like with Dr. Dre, Kanye, I think of how they changed the game as a producer, and even with Dr. Dre as of late, it's like it just gets harder and harder and harder to really make that impact and shift the sound. And I think Kanye also hasn't really done himself any favors, I guess, media wise, with whether it's going on Alex Jones and making Alex Jones look like the rational one to the average viewer who doesn't have time to explore conspiracies all day, or making Nick Fuentes look like the rational. I guess Nick Fuentes was egging him on then, but he's making like Alex Jones, who everyone thinks is the prototype nut, look like the sane, sober voice in the room. It's like, okay, how many times can this guy go out there and do something? It's not even just like, oh, he's click farming. It's kind of like, that's a tough one, bro. It's a tough one to defend, and you can't really do it.
No, you can, and you really shouldn't either. Especially with, I mean, his last big controversy was the Nazi phase, and that was a really disgusting phase of any person to have. Never mind just Kanye himself. Like he knows better, and he did it just for what. And you can make your conspiracies on why he said what he said, but like that was the most heinous thing that any like popular figure has done over the last 10 years or so. Like it's disgusting what that was. Um, and I just, with all of his mishaps, with all of his public outbursts as well, like, I don't know. I think he's somebody who would benefit from maybe being away from the spotlight. And it feels like in his everyday life, maybe he is. But this album felt like he was making an album to stay relevant, which is what you've seen from like people like Drake or Eminem or um, lesser popular artists who are trying to stay relevant. Like, I think that for him, like, he shouldn't be making music to stay relevant. He should be making music that's good and high quality. That's what's going to make him popular and keep him relevant. You don't want to keep making music just because.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, for me, like the popular artists like Kanye, like Eminem, like at least they have like a full prototype where you can take time away. Like Eminem has taken some time between albums recently. He took some time off. Then he came back with relapse.
What's that? I'm sorry, I broke up a little bit.
Yeah, it was like that, and then it was like 3 years between albums, and it's kind of the Tarantino thing where it's like, I only have so many, like, classic projects, and, like, once an artist gives me, like, 4 really good albums, I'm like, I'm kinda happy with that, and I don't expect that level of creativity from them, because I feel like after you do 4 iconic albums, it's pretty hard to top it after that, or just give people the same level of experience they had with those 4 when they heard it the first time.
I think if you have one classic, it can be considered a fluke. If you have multiple classics, then you're a legend. And if you have more than 4, then you're an icon. And that's why like Eminem has his 4 solidified. Kanye has his multiple albums solidified. I think once when you've had multiple classics under your belt that can be considered like the greatest or one of the greatest of that genre, then that's when you can be pleased with that. Eminem, I can think of at least 3. Nas, you can think of at least a couple. Kanye, Tupac, Biggie, like all of these guys have their classics, multiple classics, and so that's why they should be remembered as some of the greatest.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing with him is like he kind of tries a different sound each album, which I respect in an artist. Like Kendrick does that, and then new artists to kind of try that out after kind of like the first, I guess, 2 or 3 albums kind of sounding the same. Post Malone pivoted with Austin, and I thought that was a great pivot because I felt like Beer Bongs and Bentleys, and then Hollywood is Bleeding were a similar vibe. Maybe Hollywood's Bleeding a little heavier on the guitars, but very massive pop albums where he was the biggest thing in music probably those 2 years, at least right up there with The Weeknd, whoever else you want to throw up there, and then just having the massive stadium tours, and then he takes some time off, releases Austin, which is kind of a very somber, personal acoustic album. Definitely like the vibe of that. Think it was probably one of his most impressive like writing albums. And now we get a full-on, as promised from when he was younger, country album. And I think you remember how like pop punk got huge with MGK when him and Travis Barker were like, okay, let's make a new pop punk artist for like the kind of 2 years from like 2021 to 2023. There was a huge wave. And now I feel like everyone's jumping on country, and it's kind of pretty hot right now. Country music had its biggest year streaming wise last year with Morgan Wallen absolutely blowing up, dropping a 36-song album. Luke Combs, massive tours from both of those. Jelly Roll coming out of nowhere, moving from his underground hip hop phase to suddenly now he's one of the biggest phases in music. And then him and MGK just dropped a country song. And now Post Malone dropping maybe the track list of the year, because I saw this feature list and I was like, Chris Stapleton and Post Malone.
Yeah.
I mean, does it get better than that? And it does, because he's got Dolly Parton.
Yeah, I have the track list in front of me. He's got, when you're thinking about like classic, either relevant artists of today or just like legendary country artists of old, like Tim McGraw, Hank Williams, Blake Shelton, Dolly Parton, Brad Paisley, Luke Combs, Jelly Roll, Chris Stapleton, Billy Strings, like everybody that you would want on a country album with Post Malone. Like I think he's trying to make like the biggest pop or biggest country album of the decade potentially. Like that's Post Malone has already kind of teased his country undertones. Like if you listen to some of his deeper cuts of his other albums, and especially Austin has a lot of like country elements to it. And then he was featured on Beyonce's country album earlier this year, which he has his little country undertones in. So like he's been teasing country for a long time. So when people were pushing back saying he sold out, blah blah blah, that was a load of crap. But now he's got this insane track list with some of the greatest country artists of all time. Like now we're cooking. Like this is insane.
Yeah, it's weird though, because it's weird seeing these genres like gatekeep popularity. Because like the same thing happened with MGK, where people are like, oh, he's not punk, he can't make punk albums. And then he dropped 2 back-to-back #1 albums, and then had some pretty big features, worked with the biggest pop punk drummer of all time to produce both the albums. And Post Malone, same thing. Scrolling through the comments, people are like, oh, this guy's in country. And then it's like, well, Post Malone's from Dallas. You can clearly hear that he has that inspiration in his music, same way with both of those artists. And then they both surrounded themselves with legends from the genre to make sure they're as respectful as possible. Where Luke Combs was talking about their writing sessions, and he's like, we would start most of our writing sessions at 8 p.m. and get out at 4 in the morning, working that overnight 8 to 4. And he's like, I can't say anything more positive about Post Malone, but I just find it weird that like people within a genre want to hinder it. Like, obviously it's going to be the most popular album, but that's a good thing for country music, because maybe someone is one of those weirdos who's like, oh, country's for dumb bumpkins from the South. I don't like country music. And it's just the genre I feel like that's cool to hate on. But if Post Malone can bring someone to your genre, and then they can find someone like a Morgan Wallen, be like, oh, that guy has a nice voice. Find someone like a Luke Combs. Find someone legendary like Hank Williams or Dolly Parton or Chris Stapleton. And then suddenly you open the door for everyone to come into that genre to a whole new audience. And I feel like that's something that Post Malone will do. And that's the weirdest part about those people. Like, oh, not country. Like, okay, you don't even make country music. You're just some weirdo in the comments who feels like being negative today for no reason. Who are you?
I also think that country, well, really just music in general, like, it's not like you steal the attention of these people and they can't go back and listen to their, like, it's not like if you're in the phone business, right? And you're picking your cell phone and that's all you can have is just an Apple or a Samsung or a Google Pixel. Like, with music, you can listen to Post Malone and Chris Stapleton. You can listen to Chris Stapleton and Jelly Roll. Like, you can listen to all of these artists. In fact, I finally listened to Jelly Roll recently. And I'm like, oh, okay, like he's pretty solid. So then I went in, listened to his discography, went back to Chris Stapleton and some of the other country artists. Like, you can listen to multiple artists. Like, it's not like you're splitting your attention. Like, you can listen to them all. So you should be welcoming that. I think there's going to be haters there who, are saying he's a pop star going country, but who cares? I think that he lives in fucking Utah. Like, he's a country guy.
He's from Dallas.
Yeah, he's from Texas. Like, he's country. Like, why do we got to legitimize it? Like, he is who he is.
Yeah, he wasn't on my farm hauling a tractor though.
Yeah, I'm like, what are we talking about? Post Malone, I think it's going to be really solid too. I think I'm excited for it.
I've liked the single so far. The one with Morgan Wallen was good.
Yeah, he's had good. It's been good so far. It might be interesting to do like a listening party for it, and just doing a listen through.
Super
it drops
down
at what on Friday?
I'm not sure. I think it might be later in August.
Okay, we'll look.
I think there's a single with Luke Combs dropping this week. So it may come out like 2 weeks after that.
Okay. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think this will be a good project, and we'll do a review when it finally does drop. Give our thoughts on it, just like we did with Vultures.
Yeah, people would be like, "Well, if you actually listen to real country music, this isn't good."
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
No.
I don't get it. Why don't you want your own genre to be more popular? But yeah, that will happen, and then oh my god, we just got news that Patriots are out on Brandon Aiyuk. So the entire first segment we had of the show where we talked about Brandon Aiyuk, how it made so much sense for him to go to the Patriots, we're wrong. Fast forward to the end of the stream. I guess we'll re-edit the live stream and put this at the front, because he said they had a deal with the Patriots. The 49ers were like, wow, what a great deal with the Patriots. Spectacular. And then Brandon Aiyuk was like, cold weather, New England people, bad driving. I'm out. So the Patriots are officially out of the running for Brandon Aiyuk. This is stupid. We started the live stream with this. I should have known this was the case.
Yeah.
Now I feel like an idiot.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. Well, he'll either go to Cleveland now or Pittsburgh. So I guess he wants to go somewhere where he's going to win. So both of those teams are going to win twice as many games as the Patriots. So I guess
Oh my God.
that's good. It sounds like there's a lot of distraction with the Steelers. If I had to guess which of the two teams he's going to go to, it'll be the Steelers. It makes more sense for the Steelers to make the move. Hopefully they can just keep George Pickens on the team as well.
I don't think Cleveland can afford him.
My thing is
the
with
Steelers
Cleveland,
aren't paying a quarterback.
The Browns had cap hell. We talked about it like when we were previewing the offseason. They somehow got under the cap by making some big cuts, but they don't have any draft picks and they don't have any money, which are the two things you're going to need to sign Brandon Aiyuk. So unless if you're trading Amari for him, which like, all right, you get a little bit younger, but I don't see how you can make that work, honestly, if you're the Browns. Or if that's even what you need. You don't really need Brandon Aiyuk. You already have good weapons.
No. Steelers kind of need him, though, with
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson gone. Like, you need a second receiver, especially with how bad your quarterbacks are.
Yeah. Brandon Aiyuk and George Pickens would be nasty, and their offense would probably still be middle of the pack, honestly. Unless if Russ returns to form.
Yeah, and that's why Najee Harris is going to return to form because, Noah, Brandon Aiyuk will be the difference maker. Deontay Johnson was really the problem for Najee Harris, averaging 1 yard per carry.
Yeah, I've given up hope on that guy. I've given up hope. Never again will I ever go after Najee Harris. He's been too many people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a sad day. Like Fox last Friday, Skip Bayless' last day of Undisputed. He's officially fired after creating one of the most iconic sports shows of all time, kind of starting the whole, kind of created a genre of sports content. Kind of the godfather of that. Came from a troubled childhood home, comes up, starts First Take, creates the monster today that is Stephen A. Smith, helps put Shannon Sharp on, and then they have their feud and their breakup, and now Undisputed has basically been unwatchable since Shannon Sharp has left, to the semblance that it was, where some people thought it already was unwatchable. But Skip Bayless is officially retired, and FS1 is trying to fill that slot with First Things First now and make Nick Wright the face of the network. And I didn't know this, but apparently Nick Wright is only 38, even though he looks like he's going on 50.
Yeah. First off, with Skip Bayless, talk about one of the most iconic sports commentators of all time. I mean, first it started off with Cold Pizza, and then it turned into First Take. First Take, they had ratings galore with it. Like, basically, I don't know if he built Stephen A. Smith, but he definitely propelled him to new heights. And then goes to FS1, kind of starts a mass exodus of ESPN. Him and Cowherd all go to FS1. You see people like Marcellus Wiley and Chris Broussard and all these other people leave ESPN. Has a lot of success there, leads the ratings there, kind of wins the breakup for a short while. But now seeing him gone, like, I don't know if he'll get another opportunity with another network. At least I don't think ESPN's going to bark up his tree. So it's really just his podcast. But like, talking about like end of an era of somebody truly iconic. And then for FS1, they're kind of in a relatively similar predicament that ESPN finds themselves in now, where trying to find the identity of their next generation of talent. Like, I think Nick Wright is a fine talent, but he's also super annoying, like voice wise and just take wise. So I don't know if he's going to end up being their face long term. I think they'll have to find new talent, and that's going to be hard to find.
Yeah. Nick Wright himself, I definitely get like the whole narrative, how everyone, not me, but everyone says that he has a super punchable face, he has a high screechy voice, and it's annoying. And these are other people in the comments saying it, not me. He has weird, terrible takes sometimes in the comments, is what people say who watch that show, and that's people's complaint. However, it does get balanced out by Kevin Wildes on that show, where he's kind of the sense of humor and levity. And honestly, he usually has the best takes on that show between Chris Broussard and Nick Wright, even though he's the moderator. And then Chris Broussard also balances him out where he can kind of go on those rants and kind of be the equilibrium to that show where you're not completely annoyed with Nick Wright where you were with Chris Carter, where Chris Carter was kind of just felt like almost a cheerleader for him. And then Nick Wright was almost in awe of Chris Carter in that show. And now him and Chris Broussard kind of on the same level there. But the dynamic of the three of them, I feel like works better than any three-person dynamic on First Take as of right now, because it's like their three-person dynamic would be like Stephen A, Chris Russo, Kendrick Perkins. What?
Gross.
NFL, Marcus Spears, Stephen A, Dan Orlovsky. Like, that's not really what you want to see, but like they have a pretty solid like dynamic to the three of them, so I could see how the show itself, but Nick Wright can't be the face of your network. But with ESPN, they have Pat McAfee, who does ratings. He already had a show before them. He's a proven talent. The only thing is they can't really control him, but people still like to watch him. You have like the people who are in the industry who complain about him, but that's probably because he has ratings, a better show than them. And, you know, people would rather watch them than just watch him give his honest opinion than just watch them complain or come from a disingenuous place where they feel like they got their talking points, where Pat McAfee doesn't get his talking points from anybody. And that's why people relate to him, because like even if you don't agree with him, you know it's his honest opinion, even if he's sugarcoating it and not saying exactly what he wants to say.
Yeah.
Or jumping the shark.
Yeah, and he's not like pumping up certain teams like the Cowboys and Bills, and they're not talking up players like Dak and Josh Allen, or they're not. It feels like with the media, especially ESPN and FS1, like they're pumping up different agendas where like Pat McAfee doesn't do that, and that's why people gravitates towards him. That's why people also really like JJ Redick when he was on the air, like people who aren't pushing agendas.
Yeah, exactly. Because like the thing with Pat and JJ Redick is they're an athlete and they're coming at it from that perspective, and they're the only ones who really got that popular without being negative. You know, JJ Redick's negative sometimes. I guess he's a little bit moody, but Pat McAfee just talks about how great everyone is because he understands how hard it is to get there. So he kind of has that effect where he brings everyone up with him, you know?
Yeah.
And like he put all of his homies on, which is super respectable. And now he has D-Butt on the show, Pac-Man Jones, Andrew Whitworth, and he's giving people careers as well. It's kind of like a Rogan effect almost, where he brings on all of his buddies, wants everyone to succeed, and there's like not really much negativity except for manufactured headlines from the media because they get their talking points from someone else, not their own brain.
Yeah. So now I'm curious here. So, I mean, ESPN has kind of found their face after Stephen A eventually leaves. Now, First Take, it's like, will they hire somebody new, or will they go for like Nick Wright, or will it be a new face that emerges if they retire? That's what I'm interested to see. Maybe it's, I don't really know who else could kind of replace, like, other than Nick Wright. Nick Wright's young, but I don't know who else. Do you think that they're going to go with like new talent that comes in, or do you think Nick Wright's going to be the guy?
FS1.
Yeah, FS1.
Yeah, I think you keep first things first together. It's a formula that works. You kind of have Nick Wright, who's the guy who takes himself way too seriously. Chris Broussard, who's the guy where everything he says makes sense, but he doesn't get any of his picks right. And then you kind of have the funny, maybe he comes off as kooky guy in Kevin Wildes. Then he adds levity to the show and puts Nick Wright in his place when he needs to, and gets most of his picks right. So I think you keep that together, and they want to put that show in the same slot as First Take to compete with it head to head. And then also Nick Wright has been complaining about not living in California, so maybe if they are in that slot, you can move him back to LA, and I'm sure they would love the warm weather instead of the harsh New England northeastern winters.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I'm excited to get out of that myself. So hopefully soon enough, that'll all be figured out. But interesting to see how everything shakes out with the post Skip Bayless era of FS1.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know the crazy thing about, like, you mentioned the weather, but like New England people like think Texas weather is like all like Houston is all of Texas.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you realize it has 6 ecosystems going on? Like, I talked to someone who didn't even know Texas had trees.
Huh.
Just thought it was an entire desert. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the amount of people who don't look at a map, I'm like, you don't know it has trees and you think the entire state is 100% humidity?
Idiots. No, it's dope that Texas is also so big too. Like there's different sides of every part of that state. There's mountains and oceans and deserts. They got everything there.
Yeah. Yeah, the
but
dry heat is nice for sure.
yeah, I'm excited for that. But yeah, we went over the Brandon Aiyuk fiasco, which looks like the Patriots will not be going after him now. We went over FS1. We went over some of the different reviews of latest content here. Any other messages to relay before we hop off?
Yeah, I think the only message I have to relay is an important one. And if you're looking at home, if you're watching live right now, or if you watched all the way to the end, I do appreciate it. But I want you to hold this message close to you in your heart. After you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, take this into your heart. The most important message, as always, stay brick.